Chapter 1827. Unknowingly, the green-robed cultivator had already arrived on the battlefield. Furthermore, he was already behind the shadowless assassin. Perhaps it was because of the chaos on the battlefield or because the shadowless assassin was focused on the short-haired burly man, he did not notice the approaching danger. In any case, by the time the red-robed woman looked over, Su Zimo was already standing behind the shadowless assassin. The two of them were inches apart. Immediately after, the shadowless assassin seemed to have sensed something and dodged to the side without turning back. Su Zimo attacked. He did not use any earth-shattering methods, nor did he release any mystical abilities or immortal arts. He simply extended his palm and slapped the top of the shadowless assassin's head. It was too fast and the shadowless assassin could not dodge it. There was a crisp sound. Under the red-robed woman's gaze, the shadowless assassin's head was like a round watermelon that was instantly crushed by Su Zimo's palm and exploded, causing blood to splatter everywhere. That power was enough to shatter the shadowless assassin's essence spirit. A mystic immortal of stage 7 was dead. Shadowless. The gray-robed old man was enraged as he hollered. Goddess Orchid narrowed her eyes as well. It was not only the shadowless assassin. Even the gray-robed old man, Goddess Orchid and everyone else present did not notice how Su Zimo had arrived behind the shadowless assassin. By the time they noticed something amiss, they saw the shadowless assassin being slapped to death by Su Zimo. The gray-robed old man's spirit consciousness swept past Su Zimo's body rapidly. Mystic Essence Realm Level 5. The gray-robed old man felt relieved. A mere mystic immortal of stage 5 was nothing to be afraid of and posed no threat to them. At the same time, he was secretly regretful. The shadowless assassin was truly too careless. If not for that, he would not have been ambushed and killed in a single palm strike. Almost everyone who witnessed this scene came to the same conclusion. That was because no one believed that a mystic immortal of stage 5 would possess the strength to kill a mystic immortal of stage 7. Actually, the gray-robed old man and the others did not know. Just now, in order to kill the shadowless assassin as quickly as possible, Su Zimo had even used the 9 true dragon flashes. This was a movement technique that was equivalent to teleportation. On the chaotic battlefield, Su Zimo blinked behind the shadowless assassin. How could he have noticed? In other words, just now, Su Zimo had chosen to attack the shadowless assassin. If he chose to attack the gray-robed old man and consort Orchid, their fates would be the same as the shadowless assassin. This kind of terrifying movement technique was a part of one's strength. In the distant forest, the red-clothed woman's expression still hadn't relaxed. Even if the shadowless assassin died, Xianggu still had 2 level 7 mystic immortals and 5,000 soldiers. On their side, the short-haired man and the black-clothed youth were both injured. Of the remaining several hundred people, nearly half of them were killed or injured in this short collision. It was a disastrous loss. They had still lost this battle. The red-clothed woman was just about to move and join the battle when she saw the 5th-level Mystic Origin Stage cultivator actually charge towards the gray-robed old man. A level 5 Mystic Immortal wants to challenge a level 7 Mystic Immortal? Is he courting death? This thought flashed through the red-dressed girl's mind. You don't know what's good for you. The gray-robed old man glared at Su Zimo, who was charging over with a cold expression, and said slowly, I was just about to look for you. You've delivered yourself to me. Very good. The gray-robed old man strode forward. His blood chi surged and his fists shone with silver light as he smashed them towards Su Zimo. Freeze! Su Zimo's expression was calm as he activated his primordial spirit and suddenly spoke. Minor Mystique, Immobilization Art. The gray-robed old man shuddered. After all, there was a difference of 2 levels between the two of them. Almost instantly, the gray-robed old man broke free from the immobilization art and wasn't affected much. The gray-robed old man sneered. Insignificant skill. Is that so? Su Zimo smiled indifferently. Insignificant skill. I'll take your life. Just a moment of stagnation was enough for him. Suddenly, a damaged bronze square tripod flew out from his glabella and smashed towards the gray-robed old man. The gray-robed old man had just broken free from the immobilization art and could not dodge in time. He could only raise his fists and punch towards the incoming bronze square tripod. Crack, crack, crack. The next moment, a series of bone-cracking sounds could be heard in an extremely horrifying manner. Right in front of the red-dressed girl, the gray-robed old man's gloves shattered and the bones in his arms were shattered into several pieces by the bronze square tripod. Even the giants with their strong physiques in the past could not defend against the power of the bronze square tripod. This gray-robed old man was even weaker. Ah! The gray-robed old man's face was drained of blood as he let out a tragic cry. Both of his arms hung limply by his side. The bones inside had already been shattered by the bronze square cauldron. Although an injury as such wasn't fatal for mystic immortals, it meant that they were basically crippled. The moment the gray-robed old man's scream sounded, it came to a stop. Su Zimo had leaped forward and raised the bronze square tripod, smashing it against the gray-robed old man's head. Bang! The gray-robed old man's head was smashed and his primordial spirit was destroyed. He died on the spot. The situation on the battlefield changed in an instant. No one had expected the situation to change so drastically in the blink of an eye. On Zhuyangu's side, 2 Stage 7 mystic immortals had died one after another. Moreover, these 2 Stage 7 mystic immortals had died too quickly. Not many people could react in time. To Su Zimo, the key to this battle was to kill the 3 Stage 7 mystic immortals as quickly as possible. If the 3 Stage 7 mystic immortals died, the rest were nothing to be afraid of. It's you! Chen Xinyang finally noticed this scene and his gaze fell on Su Zimo. He was shocked and his eyes were filled with endless hatred. Back then, in order to hunt down Su Zimo, he had lost as many as 7 of his personal guards. In the past 10 years, with the bounty offered by the Wolf Army, they could not find Su Zimo's whereabouts. He did not expect to meet him here. Moreover, this person had just appeared and ruined his plans. With the new and old hatred added together, Chen Xuanyang's eyes were red. He pointed his spear at Su Zimo and roared, "Kill! Kill this person!" In an instant, at least 1,000 people from Zhuyangu rushed towards Su Zimo and attacked him. At the same time, Goddess Orchid's expression was solemn. She did not dare to be careless. With a wave of her sleeve, 10 silver orchids appeared and shot towards Su Zimo. These 10 orchids almost sealed off Su Zimo's escape routes. One must know that each orchid was formed by more than 100 silver needles. 10 orchids were equivalent to more than 1,000 silver needles. If they landed beside Su Zimo and suddenly exploded, the destructive power would be extremely terrifying. Su Zimo's expression did not change. He activated his primordial spirit and circled his hands in front of him, quickly forming a huge shield. There seemed to be mysterious engravings on it and it emitted a dazzling light. Innate divine ability, Spirit Turtle Shield. Chapter 1828. There were more than 10 silver orchids that emitted a pungent fragrance. The moment they made contact with the divine light released by the Spirit Turtle Shield, they exploded. Every single orchid shot out more than 100 silver needles that were as thin as a cow's hair and landed on the Spirit Turtle Shield instantly. The Spirit Turtle Shield was an innate divine power imparted to Su Zimo by Daiyu. Not only did it possess an extremely frightening defense, it could also release a powerful recoil. Su Zimo was 2 cultivation realms apart from Goddess Orchid. If Goddess Orchid released a ferocious divine power or immortal art, the Spirit Turtle Shield would only be able to defend against it with great difficulty. However, the terrifying thing about the 10 silver orchids was not their strength. Instead, it was the silver needles that were as thin as hair. If those soft silver needles were scattered in midair, they would release an extremely frightening lethality. However, they could not penetrate the Spirit Turtle Shield when they landed on it. On the contrary, the 1,000 silver needles were sent flying in all directions by the recoil of the Spirit Turtle Shield. At that moment, the 1,000-odd cultivators from Zhuyangu had just charged forward. Some of them were met with a calamity before they could even get close. One after another, the silver needles pierced the bodies of the Zhuyangu cultivators. Due to the fact that the silver needles were so thin that they pierced through flesh, Everyone did not feel any pain and merely felt a slight itch. However, before the Zhiyangu cultivators could take more than a few steps, the poison in the silver needles had already spread throughout their bodies and even entered their consciousnesses. By the time the cultivators realized that something was amiss, it was already too late. Their faces had already turned silvery white as though they were covered in a layer of silver frost. They collapsed limply with widened eyes. They died with grievances. Some of the cultivators reacted in time and released their essence spirits to escape the battlefield. However, in the upper world, without a physical body, they were no different from wandering ghosts with only their essence spirits left. Some of the cultivators were extremely alert and used the mystic-grade dermic treasures in their hands to block many of the silver needles and survived. Even so, Goddess Orchid's attack this time round killed at least 500 cultivators from Zhiyangu. When he saw that, the short-haired burly man was invigorated and could not help but burst into laughter. "Ha! Old witch, you're truly decisive when you attack. You're even so ruthless to your own people. If you do that a few more times, I think the remaining 4,000-odd cultivators from Zhiyangu will be killed by you as well." Many Zhiyangu cultivators knew that what was happening just Zhiyangu was an accident. Or rather, it was not Goddess Orchid's fault. She was Zhiyangu, Goddess Orchid's goddess, Goddess Orchids, Goddess, Goddess Orchids, Goddess Orchid's bodies, Goddess, 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 Xuanya, Goddess, 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 Goddess. Shua, Shua's you, goddesses, Goddess, Goddess, Goddesses. You think too highly of yourself. I never thought of scheming against you. As right goddesses, Su's. Before he finished his sentence, Su Zimo suddenly extended his palm and formed a gigantic millstone in midair, crushing down on Goddess Orchid with a ferocious aura. The Great Chaos Palm. This was the ultimate technique of the Hunyuan sect in the mortal world. Wu Dao had already mastered it and integrated it into Wu Dao's cauldron. Before he ascended, he had already imparted it to Qinglian's real body. "You're courting death." Goddess Orchid was not afraid at all. She stretched out her hand and slammed it against Su Zimo's palm. "Brother Su, be careful." The short-haired man quickly reminded Su Zimo, "This old witch is full of poison. Don't come into contact with her." Just as he was about to jump up and join forces with Su Zimo, he suddenly felt dizzy and almost fell to the ground. "Oh no!" The short-haired man was shocked. "I've been hit." Just now, Goddess Orchid had released an orchid. Although it did not hit him, it had brushed past his eyes. He had only inhaled a little of the fragrance of the silver orchid and he had been poisoned. The poison was not too strong and could not threaten his life for now. Even so, he could not join the battle for now. He could only channel his qi and blood to fight against the poison in his body. Kill! At the same time, many Zhiyangu cultivators were standing in the distance. They took out their Dharma treasures and smashed them towards Su Zimo's back and head. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo was surrounded and attacked from both sides. Bang! Su Zimo's Great Chaos Palm collided with Goddess Orchid's palm. In a flash, Su Zimo did not even turn his head. He waved his sleeves and a handful of yellow sand suddenly formed an airtight barrier behind him. Bang! 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 Hundreds of Dharma treasures hit the yellow sand but could not penetrate it. They fell from the sky. Living soil of the 9 heavens. On the other side, the moment Goddess Orchid and Su Zimo exchanged blows, she realized that something was wrong. An extremely terrifying twisting, crushing, and obliterating power erupted from the great chaotic origin palm and surged out. Goddess Orchid was not a body-tempering cultivator and her body was weak. Even though her cultivation realm was higher than Su Zimo's, she could not defend against the power of the great chaos palm in a melee battle. The moment the two of them exchanged blows, the outcome was decided. "Ah!" Goddess Orchid shrieked. Her slender hand was smashed into a bloody mess by the great chaos palm and was almost broken from the wrist. Goddess Orchid retreated and endured the pain. She glared at Su Zimo and gritted her teeth. "Junior, you're dead meat. You'll die from the poison in less than 3 breaths." The poison in her palm was even more terrifying than the poison on the silver needles. Although Goddess Orchid was injured, she believed that Su Zimo would definitely die. Fufu. Su Zimo chuckled and shook his head. I'm sorry to disappoint you. The poison in your body can't hurt me. The grade 9 creation Qinglian was flawless and invulnerable to all poisons. Not to mention external poisons, even the impurities in the essence condensation pill would be expelled by Qinglian's true body. Goddess Orchid was originally standing not far away, waiting for Su Zimo to die from the poison. However, Su Zimo's blood and qi surged as he strode over. His face was ruddy and his eyes were bright. There were no signs of poison at all. A trace of panic finally flashed across Goddess Orchid's eyes. She suddenly realized something terrifying. It seemed that all her methods had no effect on this green-robed man in front of her. Seeing that Su Zimo was getting closer and closer, the fear in Goddess Orchid's heart grew greater and greater. Finally, she let out a scream, put down all her pride, and turned to escape. Facing a Stage 5 Mystic Immortal, she, a Stage 7 Mystic Immortal, chose to escape. However, she did not manage to escape. Instead, she felt as if her feet were entangled by something. Goddess Orchid looked down. She did not know when, but emerald green plants and vines had crawled all over her feet, firmly restraining her on the spot. The grade 9 creation Qinglian could easily move all the plants in this forest with just a thought. It's over. This thought flashed across Goddess Orchid's mind and she felt a pain at the back of her head. The next moment, she completely lost consciousness. 2K Reading Network. Chapter 1829. With Goddess Orchid's skills, she could easily break free from the restraints of these plants and vines. However, these plants and vines could only restrain Goddess Orchid's body for a moment. For Su Zimo, that was enough. Under everyone's gaze, Su Zimo stepped forward and pierced Goddess Orchid's head with his finger, destroying her primordial spirit. In the next moment, Goddess Orchid fell to the ground like the many withered plants under her feet. She was dead. At this point in the battle, the 3 Stage 7 Mystic Immortals of Xianggu had all died. The whole process from Su Zimo's attack to the death of the 3 Stage 7 Mystic Immortals only took a dozen breaths. Everything happened too quickly. There were even many cultivators who could not accept this fact for a while. Eldest young master, what should we do? The remaining Stage 6 Mystic Immortals of Xianggu lost their composure. They looked at Chen Xianyang in fear and asked in a low voice. Chen Xuanyang's face was gloomy. The death of the 3 Stage 7 Mystic Immortals had a great impact on the entire battle. At the very least, it was a huge blow to the morale of Xianggu's side. At this moment, a trace of fear and timidity flashed across the eyes of many Xianggu cultivators. Chen Xianyang was unwilling to accept this. The short-haired man and his group were the remnants of the 3 major forces. All these years, they had been secretly opposing Xianggu. Chen Xianyang had waited for this day with great difficulty. He had set up a trap to capture this group of people in one fell swoop. Could it be that he had to return empty-handed today? Moreover, Su Zimo was also a thorn in his side. He had to kill him. Could it be that he had to return to Xianggu today? At this moment, Chen Xianyang did not realize that the current situation was no longer under his control. He was still thinking about whether to retreat or fight. Su Zimo was ready to attack and kill them all in the 100,000 mountains. I can't retreat. Soon, Chen Xianyang made a decision. With this retreat, not only would he lose all face, even Xianggu's reputation would probably fall to the bottom of the valley, and it would be looked down upon and mocked by the other powers on Dragon Abyss Star. Kill! Chen Xianyang gritted his teeth and said coldly, he's only a level 5 Mystic Immortal. The only reason he was able to kill Shadowless and the others was because of some unorthodox methods. Including me, we have 5 6th-rank Mysterious Immortals and over 4,000 Xianggu disciples. If we attack with our full strength, I don't believe we can't kill a 5th-rank Mysterious Immortal. Everyone listen up. I, Chen Xianyang, will reward anyone who can kill this man with 100,000 core condensing pills. Chen Xianyang said loudly. With a generous reward, there would definitely be brave men. Many Zuyangu cultivators were still a little afraid at first, but when they heard this, many of them looked at Su Zimo with a burning gaze. Even a few hesitant level 6 mystic immortals were tempted. That's right, kill him. A level 6 mystic immortal stood out and said in a low voice, just now, he killed Shadowless and the others, and he has already used many methods. Everyone be careful and avoid those methods. Just now, everyone had seen Su Zimo take out a broken cauldron and kill the gray-robed old man. Therefore, many cultivators would try their best to avoid going head-on with the bronze square cauldron. Condense. A one-eyed level 6 mystic immortal suddenly attacked and shouted. Standing afar, he activated his primordial spirit and unleashed a minor theurgy. The theurgy filled the air and condensed into a spinning eyeball. With a strange gaze, it stared at Su Zimo. Boom! Another level 6 mystic immortal attacked at the same time and unleashed a minor theurgy. The theurgy filled the air and quickly formed a spinning axe in the air, chopping at Su Zimo's head. The other level 6 mystic immortals also attacked and unleashed their minor theurgies. Su Zimo was fearless. He activated his chi and blood and shook his body, breaking free from the power of the theurgy eyeball. He formed different sword seals with both hands and shouted, slash. Su Zimo waved his hands and slashed forward with his sword. The sword seal in his left hand slashed out a dragon snake. A dragon's roar came from the sky. A divine dragon descended and crashed into the crowd, killing everyone in its path. The ground split apart and the soaring serpent soared into the sky. It flapped its flaming wings and roared loudly, spewing hot red lava that splashed into the crowd. More than 4,000 cultivators in Zuyangu panicked and fell into a sea of fire. Hysterical screams could be heard. A series of bedazzling sword chi burst forth from Su Zimo's right hand. It was white and extremely sharp, as though it was going to slice the entire world into pieces. When the heavens unleashed their killing intent, the stars shifted. When the earth unleashed its killing intent, the dragon snake rose. The two great sword arts were released at the same time and their killing intent surged. It was as though they wanted to destroy the world. Even if some cultivators could escape the claws of the divine dragon, they could not escape the flames of the soaring serpent. Even if they could avoid the slaughter of the dragon snake, it was difficult for them to defend against the sharpness of the heaven-slaying sword chi. Even the minor level 6 mystic immortals released just now was destroyed by multiple heaven-slaying sword chi, let alone the level 3, level 4 and level 5 mystic immortals. Although the power of the eyeball was strange, it was extremely fragile and was penetrated by a single heaven-slaying sword chi. Before the incoming axe could land on Su Zimo, it was sliced by a few heaven-slaying sword chi and dissipated into the world. That was an extremely shocking scene. It was as though the apocalypse had arrived and those mystic immortals were like lowly ants that struggled and roared in the apocalypse but were helpless. The red-robed woman stood in the forest and was completely dumbfounded. Her mouth was agape and her eyes were filled with endless shock. Was that power really something a level 5 mystic immortal could release? Not to mention him, even Duan Tianliang, Big Yellow, and Ing Zhao were grimacing in pain and gasping. Although they had been by Su Zimo's side for 10 years, they had never seen Su Zimo make a move. How could they have expected that Su Zimo would create such a terrifying scene the moment he made a move? Actually, the cultivators on the Dragon Abyss planet had ascended from the lower realm and had never left. Their knowledge was limited and they did not recognize the two great sword arts. If some of the exalted immortals of the natives saw this scene, they would definitely be shocked. The heavenly slay and earthly slay sword techniques were infamous even in the upper realm. It was completely logical that the two great sword arts could release such terrifying power. On the battlefield, the two great sword arts exploded and blood splattered everywhere as wails filled the air. Those level 6 mystic immortals could only barely protect themselves with their Dharma treasures and divine abilities. At that moment, the few people who just now wanted to join forces to kill Su Zimo had deep fear in their eyes. At that moment, Su Zimo arrived in the air. A level 6 mystic immortal looked nervous as he stared at Su Zimo who was not far away. He only felt that one of Su Zimo's eyes was getting brighter and brighter, becoming extremely dazzling. Suddenly, Su Zimo's right eye emitted a blazing light that instantly entered the person's glabella. The illumination eye. This level 6 mystic immortal was caught off guard and was killed on the spot by the illumination eye. You still want to avoid my means? Su Zimo scoffed coldly. Do you think you can dodge my methods? Chapter 1830. The illumination eye had become even more terrifying after going through the heavenly tribulation and absorbing the heaven and earth yuan qi. A beam of light directly pierced through the glabella of this stage 6 mystic immortal. The remaining stage 6 mystic immortals did not dare to fight. They scattered and fled frantically into the distance. In the blink of an eye, the space between Chen Xianyang and Su Zimo was empty. There was no one blocking them. Their gazes collided with each other. Chen Xuanyang's eyes were filled with deep hatred and killing intent. He glared at Su Zimo and said coldly, Su Zimo, you're finished. You've offended the wolf army, Zuyengu, and you've ruined my plans twice. There's no place for you on this Dragon Abyss planet. Su Zimo shook his head slightly and chuckled. He looked disdainful and said, I haven't seen you do anything to me in the past 10 years. Chen Xuanyang's expression was ugly as he said hatefully, if I had known, I would have killed you personally 10 years ago. Cut the crap. Su Zimo stepped into the air and quickly approached Chen Xianyang. He said indifferently, Today, I'll give you a chance. The other Xiangu cultivators could not even take care of themselves under the heavenly slaughter and earthly slaughter sword techniques. The stage 6 mystic immortals were completely scared out of their wits by Su Zimo and were fleeing into the distance. There was no one who dared to stop Su Zimo. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo had already arrived in front of Chen Xianyang. Kill! Chen Xianyang took a deep breath and bit the tip of his tongue lightly. He spat out a stream of blood essence and sprinkled it on the spear in his hand. Immediately after, Chen Xianyang activated his primordial spirit. His qi and blood surged as he crazily spun the spear in his hand. It circled in front of him and formed a blood-red sun. This was a secret technique of the Xiangu. It could be used for both offense and defense, and it was extremely famous on the Dragon Abyss planet. Just now, the black-clothed youth's long sword was sent flying by Chen Xuanyang's secret technique. Break! Su Zimo was not afraid at all. Facing the monstrous blood qi, the blood qi in his body burst forth, emitting the sound of waves. He exhaled and punched the center of the blood-red sun. Boom! A loud explosion shook the heavens and the earth. A shockwave visible to the naked eye burst out between the two of them. It was like a wave, rapidly spreading in all directions. Many Xiangu cultivators were caught off guard and were instantly sent flying by this wave of air. The short-haired man, the black-clothed young man, and the others were worried about Su Zimo's situation. They squinted their eyes, ignoring the dust blowing in their faces, and focused their gazes. Chen Xianyang rode on his warhorse. The spear in his hands had already stopped spinning and his eyes were bloodshot. As for Su Zimo, he hovered in midair. His fist was at the center of Chen Xuanyang's spear, and he was motionless as well. It was as though the two of them had stopped moving. The next moment, the warhorse beneath Chen Xianyang suddenly let out a tragic cry and blood sprayed out of its nostrils. With a thud, it sprawled on the ground. The power released by Su Zimo's punch was way too ferocious. Although the warhorse was covered in armor, its organs were shattered by Su Zimo's punch and it could not survive. Exclamation point. Immediately after, Chen Xianyang opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was drained of blood and turned pale. Chen Xianyang lost his grip on his spear, and it flew out of his hand and struck Zhang Xian squarely in the chest. The heart-protecting mirror in front of his chest was shattered by the spear. Chen Xianyang shuddered. Even though he was wearing a treasure armor that blocked most of the power, his organs were still shaken violently. His spear shattered his heart-protecting mirror and was repelled, falling to the ground beside him. The short-haired burly man's gaze instinctively landed on the spear and his pupils constricted as he gasped. How was that a spear? The middle of the spear was deeply indented. According to what he knew, Chen Xuanyang's mystic Dharma treasure was superior-grade mystic Dharma treasure. A superior-grade mystic Dharma treasure was bent by a single punch from the green-robed cultivator and was almost crippled. Even if the green-robed cultivator was carrying a mystic Dharma treasure, the power released was terrifying enough. The short-haired burly man pondered to himself. If he was in the other party's shoes, he might not be able to receive that punch even if he attacked with all his might. Chen Xianyang spat out blood and leaped down from his dying warhorse, retreating. Su Zimo's expression was indifferent as he moved like a shadow. At the same time, he withdrew a talisman from his storage bag and tore it apart without hesitation. The moment the talisman shattered, it burst forth with a strange power. The void around him collapsed and a pitch-black cave appeared. No one knew where it led to. A transference talisman? Su Zimo narrowed his eyes. In the upper realm, space was extremely stable and even the power of a heaven immortal expert could not shatter the void, let alone tear through the void and teleport away. The transference talismans of the lower realm were useless in the upper realm. Even if it was torn apart, it would not cause any ripples in the void. However, the fact that the transference talisman in Chen Xuanyang's hands could create a spatial tunnel in the upper realm was proof of how precious it was. Su Zimo, no matter where you hide, as long as you're still on the Dragon Abyss planet, Zuyangu will definitely seek revenge for today's blood debt and, at the same time that the transference talisman was torn apart, Chen Xuanyang's figure had almost disappeared into the pitch-black spatial tunnel. His voice came from the spatial tunnel, filled with endless hatred. However, Su Zimo's reaction was even faster. The moment Chen Xianyang tore the talisman, he attacked brazenly and grabbed towards Chen Xianyang. Su Zimo's palm entered the pitch-black spatial tunnel and seemed to have grabbed onto something. Su Zimo exerted strength in his fingers and his sharp fingernails popped out like swords. With it, they pierced through the flesh and pulled towards the outside. Before Chen Xianyang could finish his sentence, he let out a tragic cry. Su Zimo retracted his arm. His palm was still holding onto another arm. On the other end of the arm, blood, flesh and bones were stuck together and it was a ghastly sight. The black-robed young man's heart skipped a beat. That was Chen Xuanyang's arm. Furthermore, it was torn off by the green-robed cultivator before him. Although Chen Xianyang managed to escape with his life, he lost an arm. To him, it was an irreparable injury. In the upper realm, one could only regrow a severed arm if they cultivated to the Earth Essence realm. However, on the Dragon Abyss planet, it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to cultivate to level 8 or level 9 Mystic Essence realm, let alone the Earth Essence realm. That required a massive amount of resources and a long period of accumulation. The various major factions on the Dragon Abyss planet, including the leaders of the 4 bandits, were merely level 8 Mystic Immortals. One could only encounter level 9 Mystic Immortals in Dragon Abyss City. End of chapter. Chapter 1831. At this point, there was no longer any suspense in this battle. The few Stage 6 Mystic Immortals of Zuyangu had already fled. The remaining Zuyangu cultivators were completely defeated by the heaven and earth-slaying sword arts and were no longer in the mood to fight. Even if Su Zimo did not make a move, the cultivators under the short-haired burly man were enough to wipe out the Zuyangu cultivators. The red-robed woman stood motionless in the forest, completely stunned on the spot. From the beginning to the end, before she could make a move, the 5,000-strong army of Zuyangu was suppressed by the green-robed cultivator in the distance. And this person was only a Stage 5 Mystic Immortal. When they first saw this person, they looked down on him. At that thought, the red-robed woman smiled bitterly. At that time, they were probably a joke in the eyes of this person. Exalted Immortal, please spare our lives. On the battlefield, some of the Zuyangu cultivators could not hold on any longer and knelt on the ground, kowtowing to Su Zimo who was standing in the air. When one of them did so, the rest of the Zuyangu cultivators followed suit and knelt down. Su Zimo frowned slightly. The nature of the Zuyangu cultivators was different from the evil wolf army. The evil wolf army was unpardonable, vicious bandits who killed, burned, and pillaged. On the other hand, Although there were many Zuyangu cultivators who helped the evil wolf army, at least they did not fall to the level of bandits. However, if these people were not killed, Su Zimo could not do anything about it. He could not possibly bring this group of people along with him. Benefactor, if you don't know how to deal with this group of Zuyangu cultivators, you can leave it to us, the short-haired burly man said with a pale face, looking a little weak. How are you going to deal with them? Su Zimo asked in return. The short-haired man said, we know of a sealing technique. As long as we take away the storage pouches of these cultivators, seal their cultivation base at the first layer of arcane Aeon realm, and send someone to guard them, they can be used as spiritual farmers to grow immortal herbs. Su Zimo nodded slightly and moved his mind. The sword Chi, the divine dragon in the sky, and the soaring serpent bathed in fire suddenly froze in midair. This scene was like a miracle. The many Zuyangu cultivators who were still wailing were so frightened that their faces turned pale. They all fell silent and did not even dare to breathe loudly. The black-clothed youth came to the short-haired man's side and helped him up from the ground. As for the others, under the guidance of the red-robed woman, they began to collect the storage pouches of the Zuyangu cultivators. Furthermore, he used an immortal technique to seal the cultivation of this group of people. No one from Zuyangu dared to resist. Although the white sword energy and the dragons and snakes condensed from the sword energy were still, they did not dissipate. They were still floating above their heads. If they made any strange movements, the sword energy would descend and kill them. In this battle, Zuyangu lost nearly 3,000 men. There were more than 1,000 who surrendered and begged for mercy. Including Chen Shenyang, there were less than 1,000 Zuyangu cultivators who managed to escape. Su Zimo moved his spirit consciousness and took 3 storage pouches from the corpses. Those 3 storage pouches belonged to the 3 level 7 mystic immortals of the shadowless assassin. Be careful, benefactor. When the short-haired man saw that, he seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly reminded, there's poison on that old witch's storage pouch. The short-haired man was pointing at a silver-white storage pouch that emitted a pungent fragrance. It's fine. Su Zimo smiled faintly and picked up the storage pouch. He erased the spirit consciousness imprint on it and opened it to take a look. There were many bottles and jars in the storage pouch. Other than some elixirs that were required for cultivation, there were also medicine bottles that were filled with toxic substances. Su Zimo searched carefully and took out a medicine bottle. He poured out an elixir and sniffed it before nodding. This should be it. Su Zimo handed the elixir to the short-haired man. Eat it. It should be able to purge the poison in your body. The short-haired man was extremely forthright as well. Without hesitation, he received the elixir from Su Zimo and swallowed it. A look of admiration flashed through Su Zimo's eyes. Bro, don't. The moment the black-robed young man at the side spoke, the elixir had already entered his stomach. Don't worry, the short-haired man smiled. Benefactor won't harm me. The black-robed young man glanced at Su Zimo and muttered softly, even so, what if he chose the wrong elixir? It's fine. The short-haired man waved it off nonchalantly. On the other hand, the black-robed young man was extremely nervous as he guarded beside the short-haired man, afraid that something might happen. Not long after the short-haired man swallowed the elixir, his face gradually regained its color and his aura returned to normal as he became even more spirited. The black-robed young man heaved a sigh of relief and smiled apologetically to Su Zimo, cupping his fists. Benefactor, just now I'm sorry. Su Zimo shook his head gently. He would not take such a small matter to heart. In this short period of time, the red-robed woman had already sealed more than 1,000 Zuyangu cultivators with her subordinates and cleaned up the battlefield as well. The red-robed woman walked over and handed all the dermic treasures, weapons and storage bags collected from the battlefield to Su Zimo. Benefactor, these are the treasures obtained from this battle. Please take a look. The red-robed woman looked at Su Zimo with a strange, curious, respectful and inexplicable luster in her eyes. Su Zimo nodded to himself. Although the 3 of them were doing things for the sake of the calamity, they were very principled. With so many spoils of war and storage bags, there were countless cultivation resources and dermic treasures and weapons within. However, the red-robed woman did not even open a single storage bag. Without even taking a look, she handed them to Su Zimo without touching them. Although the black-robed young man's eyes flashed with envy, he did not say anything. The short-haired burly man was even more indifferent. Su Zimo did not decline and took over the storage bags from the red-robed woman's hands, keeping all of them. These were things that he deserved to have in the first place. Benefactor. After purging the poison from his body, the short-haired burly man looked like he had recovered and knelt down towards Su Zimo. At the same time, the short-haired burly man looked at the black-robed young man and red-robed woman beside him. Second brother, little sister, come and greet our benefactor. Right from the start, it was clear that the black-robed young man was an extremely prideful person. However, he merely hesitated for a moment before kneeling down with the short-haired burly man and red-robed woman. There's no need for that, the three of you. Su Zimo extended his palm and lifted the short-haired burly man's arms. Initially, the short-haired burly man was determined to kneel down. However, when Su Zimo lifted him, he stood up uncontrollably. End of chapter. Chapter 1832. Benefactor, your strength is so great. Yu Hao was slightly stunned and said, I'm a body refiner myself, and my cultivation is even 2 realms higher than yours, yet I'm actually still slightly unable to resist it. Su Zimo smiled and didn't explain, and then he lightly flicked his sleeve to bring the black-clothed young man and red-clothed young woman up as well. The black-clothed young man cupped his fist to Su Zimo and said, Benefactor, I take back what I said at the beginning. Your ability is sufficient to arrive at Dragon Lake City. I'm Su Zimo, and we can just address each other as fellow Taoist. Su Zimo asked, May I know how to address the three of you? Yu Hao. The short-haired man pointed at the black-clothed young man at his side and said, This is Shen Fei, and that's Gu Wenjun. The three of us are sworn siblings. The red-clothed young woman called Gu Wenjun lowered her head slightly and frowned as she pondered, and then she said in a light voice, Su Zimo, this name sounds slightly familiar, I seem to have seen it somewhere before. Shen Fei said, Now that I think about it, we felt fellow Taoist Su was slightly familiar at first glance as well. Su Zimo's brows raised slightly. He'd only arrived at Dragon Lake Star for less than 10 years, and besides staying at Snowwind Ridge for a year, he'd always been in seclusion in the wilds, so he'd absolutely never seen these three people before him. But right at this moment, Gu Wenjun cried out lightly and said, I know. She raised her head and looked at Su Zimo with eyes that revealed a wisp of shock. Fellow Taoist, what did you think of? Su Zimo asked. Gu Wenjun took a deep breath and said, Fellow Taoist Su, you might not know, but during these 10 years, the Wolf Army has already issued a bounty on your head. Merely the information about you is worth 10,000 origin condensation pills. Your life is even worth 100,000 origin condensation pills. Yu Hao and Shen Fei revealed expressions of sudden understanding as well, and they recalled where they'd seen Su Zimo. In Dragon Lake City, the three of them had once seen a portrait of Su Zimo. Of course, that portrait was only a likeness. It didn't depict even 1/10,000th of the real person's aura. That was why the three of them couldn't recall it immediately. Back then, the evil wolf army was completely wiped out. Only Xianggu could provide this portrait. How did fellow Taoist Su become enemies with the vicious wolf army? Shen Fei asked curiously. After pondering for a while, Su Zimo told him about how he had robbed the people of Wind Snow Ridge 10 years ago. Moreover, he also told him everything he had heard about the collusion between Xianggu Chen Shenyang and the wolf army. Yu Hao clenched his fists slightly and said, Fellow Taoist Su, actually, it's not just Chen Shenyang. The entire Xianggu has always been in cahoots with the evil wolf army. Following that, Yu Hao recounted some past events. Actually, Su Zimo had also heard about this from Xia Qingying. Back then, there were 3 major forces on Long Yuan planet that wanted to join forces to destroy the evil wolf army. These 3 forces were Sky Pillar Stronghold, Wind Cloud Gang, and Righteous Mountain Village. However, the news was leaked later. Although the evil wolf army was defeated, the leader of the evil wolf army survived and escaped death. After this calamity, the leader's cultivation increased greatly. Not long after, the first master made a comeback, and the evil wolf army also rose from the ashes. Then the evil wolf army launched a crazy revenge on the three forces. At that time, the Goshawk gang, 2 of the 4 bandits, also joined forces with the evil wolf army. Normally, even if the 2 bandits joined forces, it would be difficult for them to destroy the 3 forces. Unexpectedly, the protector of Sky Pillar Stronghold betrayed them and ambushed and killed the leader of Sky Pillar Stronghold. Then, he faked the order of the leader of Sky Pillar Stronghold and invited the leader of Windcloud Gang and Righteous Mountain Village over to set up an ambush. The leader of Windcloud Gang and Righteous Mountain Village also died in this battle. With the leaders of the 3 factions dying one after another, the morale of the 3 factions was in chaos and they were reduced to scattered sand. Under such circumstances, the protector of Sky Pillar Stronghold worked together with the evil wolf army and Goshawk gang and destroyed the 3 factions before long. In that battle, blood flowed like rivers and flames burned everywhere. Wails could be heard everywhere and countless cultivators died. Countless women were abducted by the evil wolf army and Goshawk gang with tragic endings. At the mention of this, Yu Hao's voice turned heavier. Shen Fei and Gu Wenjun's eyes were bloodshot as well, with deep hatred in their eyes. The hundreds of cultivators under the 3 of them gathered around them. As though they had recalled something, all of them had sorrowful expressions. Su Zimo was silent. Duan Tianliang asked, "What happened after that?" Shen Fei laughed mockingly and continued, "Later on, the protector of Sky Pillar Stronghold established a new faction on the ruins, which is the current Xianggu. That traitorous protector is the current Xianggu Valley Master." This was the first time many Xianggu cultivators heard of this, and they were all shocked. This was completely different from what they knew. Gu Wenjun said, "After all these years, apart from those who escaped back then, not many people remember that bloody battle or know the truth of what happened back then." Su Zimo said, "The 3 of you are the descendants of the leaders of Sky Pillar Stronghold, Windcloud Gang and Righteous Mountain Village, right?" "No," Yu Hao shook his head. "Indeed, I was from Sky Pillar Stronghold. My second brother was from Windcloud Gang and my younger sister was from Righteous Mountain Village. However, we are not the descendants of the 3 leaders. In that battle, the descendants of the 3 leaders were all killed by the Wolf Army, the Goshawk Gang, and the Valley Master of the Blood Sun Valley. We are just the lucky survivors of the 3 factions. We want the Xianggu Valley Master, the Evil Wolf Army and the Goshawk Gang to pay with their blood." Duan Tianliang said, "No wonder you wanted to ambush Xiang. It turns out that you have such a deep grudge." Yu Hao said, "Fellow Taoist Su, although we are considered bandits, we have never been stronger than other cultivators or other factions. We are only enemies with Xianggu, the Evil Wolf Army and the Goshawk Gang." Su Zimo nodded. This could be seen from the fact that these people did not attack him at the beginning. Moreover, even if Yu Hao suspected Su Zimo, he did not kill him immediately. Instead, he guarded Su Zimo. After the battle broke out and seeing that the situation was not right, Gu Wenjun even let them go and let them escape. All the signs showed that these people were completely different from the Evil Wolf Army and Xianggu. Su Zimo asked, "Are these all you have?" "Of course not." Yu Hao said, "We also have a stronghold called the Annihilation Stronghold. Most of the people are planting immortal herbs in the stronghold. However, we will move once every 100 years to prevent being targeted by the Evil Wolf Army." Shen Fei said, "Fellow Taoist Su, you might not know, but all these years, Xianggu has been working with the Evil Wolf Army. When they head to Dragon Lake City, the Evil Wolf Army will not attack their caravan. The 2 families will split the essence condensing pills equally. As long as it is not a caravan from Xianggu, the Evil Wolf Army will massacre and loot crazily. No one can reach Dragon Lake City alive. As a result, the forces near Xianggu can only go to Xianggu to exchange for essence condensing pills." Su Zimo nodded. Wind Snow Ridge was one of these forces. Chapter 1833. In Xianggu, 100 stalks of essence-nurturing grass and rainflower could only be exchanged for 1 essence-condensing pill. However, Feng Shuling had no choice but to exchange for it in Xianggu. This road to Dragon Lake City had already been blocked off by the joint forces of Xianggu and the Wolf Army. Not to mention 100 stalks of immortal herbs for 1 elixir. Even if it was 1,000 stalks of immortal herbs for 1 elixir, the other forces could only endure it. Fellow Taoist Su, have you been to Dragon Lake City? Yu Hao asked. Su Zimo shook his head. Yu Hao said, if fellow Taoist Su doesn't mind, the 3 of us are willing to go with you to Dragon Lake City to take a look. We can also lead the way for you. Don't you have to deal with these captives? Su Zimo looked at the 1,000 over Xianggu cultivators that had surrendered. Shen Fei said, fellow Taoist, there's no need to worry. These captives have their cultivations sealed. With hundreds of us guarding them, there'll definitely be no accidents. That's good as well. Su Zimo nodded. No matter if it was him or Duan Tianliang, they weren't familiar with Dragon Lake City. It wasn't bad to have Yu Hao and the other 2 as guides. Yu Hao instructed the few cultivators behind him to escort the captives of Xianggu back to the Annihilation Stronghold before setting off with Su Zimo and the others towards Dragon Lake City. At the same time, in the courtyard of Qin Xuanyang's mansion, the void collapsed and a dark and deep spatial tunnel appeared. A figure that was covered in blood fell out from within with disheveled hair and a broken arm. Many of the servants in the mansion were shocked. Who's there? Trespassing into Xianggu? Someone shouted sternly. Quickly go call my father. The figure that was covered in blood struggled to raise his head and groaned. Everyone focused their gazes and their expressions changed drastically. Eldest young master. Young master. Everyone hurriedly swarmed forward and helped Qin Xianyang up. This movement touched the wound on Qin Xuanyang's broken arm. Qin Xuanyang's face turned even paler. He was in so much pain that his whole body was trembling. He growled, "Go and get my father." A servant hurriedly retreated and ran outside. Not long after, a middle-aged man in blood-red armor strode over. His face was gloomy and dignified. The middle-aged man was the current valley master of Xianggu. Behind him were 2 old men. They were Xianggu's Dharma protectors. When the Xianggu Valley master saw Qin Xuanyang's expression, he couldn't help but narrow his eyes. The atmosphere in the entire residence became extremely oppressive. The air seemed to have solidified. Xianyang, what's going on? Xianggu Valley master said slowly with a cold voice. Father. Qin Xianyang took a few steps forward and fell to his knees in front of Xianggu Valley master with a thud. He said sorrowfully, "Someone tore off my arm. Father, you must seek justice for me and avenge me." Xianggu Valley master took out an elixir from his storage bag and fed it to Qin Xianyang. Qin Xuanyang's face regained some color. The wound on his broken arm also showed signs of clotting. However, the excruciating pain from the wound was still excruciating. "Tell me slowly. What happened?" Xianggu Valley master asked in a low voice. "Didn't you have Shadowless and the other 2 by your side? How did the remnants of Sky Pillar's stronghold hurt you?" "Father, Shadowless and the other 2 are all dead," Qin Xianyang said. "What?" Xianggu Valley master was shocked. 3 stage 7 mystic immortals. In Xianggu, they were guardians. Even in the entire Dragon Abyss planet, they were not to be underestimated. The death of 3 stage 7 mystic immortals was not a small loss to Xianggu. Qin Xianyang laughed bitterly and said, "I don't think many of the 5,000 soldiers survived this time. I tore the teleportation talisman that you gave me to escape alive." Bang! Xianggu Valley master was furious when he heard this. In a fit of rage, he directly smashed the skull of a servant beside Qin Xianyang into pieces. Although this servant was also a stage 3 mystic immortal, Xianggu Valley master took his anger out on him and killed him on the spot. The other servants were so scared that their faces turned pale. They all knelt on the ground and trembled. Xianggu was indeed one of the 8 major forces of Dragon Abyss planet. There were tens of thousands of soldiers stationed in the valley. But even then, losing 5,000 members and 3 7th-rank mysterious immortals was still an enormous loss to Blood Sun Valley that was impossible to accept. "Valley Master, please calm down." Let's listen to what the young master has to say. The old man on the left side of Xianggu Valley Master lowered his head slightly and advised in a low voice. These two old men were Xianggu's left and right guardians. Their cultivation was at the peak of Stage 7 Mystic Aeon Realm, and their combat strength was second only to Xianggu Valley Master. It's Su Zimo. The figure of the green-robed cultivator flashed across Qin Xuanyang's mind. He gritted his teeth and said, Shadowless and the other two were assassinated by Su Zimo. If this person had not suddenly appeared, the remnants of Sky Pillar Stronghold would have been wiped out by me. Who's Su Zimo? Xianggu Valley Master frowned slightly and asked, Who is this person? Why haven't I heard of him? Xianggu Valley Master did not take the incident 10 years ago to heart at all. Naturally, he would not care about a Stage 4 Mystic Immortal. The left guardian thought for a while and asked, Is he the person who annihilated 500 soldiers of the Vicious Wolf Army 10 years ago? That's him. Qin Xianyang said with hatred. The right guardian frowned slightly and said, So it's him. I have some impression of him. A few years ago, the Vicious Wolf Army issued a bounty for his head, but they could not find his whereabouts. I didn't expect him to appear again. That's not right. The left guardian suddenly asked, 10 years ago, this person was only a Stage 4 Mystic Immortal. In just 10 years, he broke through 3 realms and cultivated to Stage 7 Mystic Immortal? Qin Xianyang hurriedly said, He's only a Stage 5 Mystic Immortal. He was able to kill Shadowless and the others because of sneak attacks and some strange methods. Breaking through to Stage 5 Mystic Aeon in 10 years. This speed is terrifying enough. The right guardian said softly. The left guardian nodded and said, No matter what method he used, to be able to cross 2 realms and kill 3 Stage 7 Mystic Immortals, this person is not simple. Qin Xianyang said sorrowfully, Father, this arm of mine was torn off by this Su Zimo. If it wasn't for my quick reaction, I wouldn't be able to see you now. Father, I want to kill him. I want him to pay for this with his blood. Xianggu Valley Master pondered for a long time before he said slowly, Send this news to the Vicious Wolf Army. The left guardian's eyes lit up and said, Valley Master is wise. With the methods of the Vicious Wolf Army, they will definitely frantically search for this person's whereabouts after receiving this news. Even if we don't make an appearance, this person will die without a doubt. Xianggu continued. Besides that, Guardian Shui, make a trip to Dragon Lake City yourself. This person obtained numerous spoils and treasures from the battle, and it's extremely likely that he's heading to Dragon Lake City. If the Vicious Wolf Army is unable to kill this person, then bring his head to me. End of this chapter. Chapter 1834. Su Zimo rode on Big Yellow and headed towards Dragon Lake City with Yu Hao, Shen Fei and Gu Wenjun. Along the way, Su Zimo roughly looked at the rewards he obtained from killing the Xianggu cultivators and was secretly delighted. There were more than 3,000 mystic-grade Dharma treasures in these storage bags. All the origin solidifying pills in the storage pouches were collected together. There were about 120,000 of them. Su Zimo even found 13 essence spirit stones in the storage bags of the Shadowless Assassin and the other 2 rank 7 mystic immortals. He found out from Yu Hao and the other 2 that a single essence spirit stone could be exchanged for 100,000 essence gathering pills on Dragon Lake Planet. The rewards this time were huge. Even if he did not go to Dragon Lake Planet to exchange for essence gathering pills, just these 120,000 essence gathering pills were enough for Su Zimo to cultivate for a period of time. Of course, Su Zimo did not change his plan and still planned to go to Dragon Lake City to take a look. It was a pity that Qin Xianyang had managed to escape. There were definitely more treasures and cultivation resources in Qin Xuanyang's storage bag. The immortal herbs that Xianggu transported this time were all in Qin Xuanyang's storage bag. It was a pity that Su Zimo could not snatch them away. Along the way, Su Zimo found out a lot of things about the upper realm from Yu Hao and the other 2. According to Yu Hao, Dragon Lake Planet belonged to Azure Cloud County. On the other hand, Cyan Cloud County was a county under Dajin. Within the jurisdiction of Azure Cloud County, there were more than 100 cities like Dragon Lake City. Dragon Lake City alone ruled the entire Dragon Lake planet. One could imagine how vast the area ruled by more than 100 cities was. And these hundreds of cities were only part of the Cyan Cloud County. Just this Azure Cloud County alone was many times larger than Tianhuang mainland. It was hard to imagine the scale of the entire Great Gene. And Great Gene was in the distance of the starry sky, above that gigantic shadow. According to Yu Hao, that shadow was a boundless continent. What they could see while standing on the Dragon Abyss planet was only the tip of the iceberg. The Great Gene Nation was on that continent. Gu Wenjun said, basically, all the cultivators on this Dragon Abyss planet want to leave this place and set foot on that land. I heard that in the other cities of Dajin in Cyan Cloud County, the essence chi of heaven and earth is many times denser than here. Cultivation speed is also much faster there. Su Zimo asked, what kind of conditions do you need to leave the Dragon Abyss planet? The Dragon Abyss star and the Great Gene Nation were separated by 10,000 miles of the Milky Way. Only celestial immortal experts could traverse the galaxy. But Xia Qingying had once told him that there was a teleportation formation in Dragon Lake City that could directly teleport cultivators to the continent at the end of the starry sky. Yu Hao said, there are two ways to leave the Dragon Abyss planet. The first is to reach the 9th level of the Mystic Origin stage. After you become a 9th rank mysterious immortal, you can head to the city governor's estate in Dragon Lake City. At that time, someone will naturally teleport you to the Grand Gene Empire. Su Zimo nodded. Presently, it would seem that a 9th level mysterious immortal was already the top expert on Dragon Abyss Star. Just now, Yu Hao had said that the city governor of Dragon Lake City was a 9th rank mysterious immortal. However, wanting to cultivate to the 9th rank mysterious immortal stage on the Dragon Abyss planet that was lacking in essence chi of heaven and earth and scarce in cultivation resources was simply as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Yu Hao continued. The second method is to spend 100 elemental spirit stones. 100 elemental spirit stones. Su Zimo frowned slightly. After all, 10,000 essence condensation pills could only be exchanged for 1 elemental spirit stone. 100 elemental spirit stones were equivalent to 1 million essence condensation pills. And to an ordinary cultivator, how could they possibly possess so many essence condensation pills? Most importantly, essence condensation pills were essential cultivation resources for mysterious immortals. If a cultivator wanted to increase their cultivation as soon as possible, they had to consume essence condensation pills. In this way, it was practically impossible to accumulate 1 million essence condensation pills. Su Zimo had only obtained 120,000 essence condensation pills, which were equivalent to 12 elemental spirit stones, from annihilating the Zhuanggu army that was almost 5,000 strong. Coupled with the 13 elemental spirit stones, it was only 25 essence condensation pills. Su Zimo said, this second method isn't much inferior to the first method, and it's extremely difficult to accomplish for ordinary cultivators. Fellow Taoist is right. Yu Hao laughed bitterly. Only a great power like the Zhuanggu on the Dragon Abyss planet would be able to accumulate 100 elemental spirit stones through the accumulation of countless years. Ordinary cultivators like us have no hope in our entire lifetimes. Everyone traveled day and night, and after around half a month, they finally arrived at Dragon Lake City. As they gazed at this city from afar, it was like an enormous ancient ferocious beast, and its enormous figure stood towering on the horizon, causing it to be extremely shocking. Not long after, Su Zimo and the others had already arrived before the city. The city walls of this ancient city were around 30 m tall, and they were formed from enormous limestone that was covered in mottled traces of time. Shen Fei said, on this Dragon Lake star, a height of 30 m is the limit that mysterious immortals can soar into the sky. So, the city walls of Dragon Lake City were built to be 30 m tall. In the higher dimensions, not only was space stable and the ground hard, even the gravitational force emitted by the ground was extremely strong. Even though mysterious immortals were able to soar into the sky, they were unable to fly too high. Moreover, the consumption of energy within their bodies was extremely intense. Even if it was a level 9 mysterious immortal, the highest they could soar was a height of 30 m. In this way, if the cultivators on Dragon Lake Star wanted to enter the city, they could only pass through the city gate that was enormous like the mouth of a ferocious beast. On both sides of the city gate stood over 10 guards with sabers hanging from their waists, and all of them had cold expressions as they stopped everyone that entered the city and questioned them. These guards had various cultivations, and most of them were level 6 mysterious immortals, and there were even 2 level 7 mysterious immortals. Yu Hao said, "If you want to enter the city, then everyone must first pay 1,000 origin condensation pills, and these guards will give us a command token every other day. With this command token in hand, you can stay in Dragon Lake City for a day. After a day, this command token will vanish. If you want to continue staying in Dragon Lake City, then you have to pay another 1,000 origin condensation pills, otherwise, you'll be kicked out by the guards of Dragon Lake City." What a fellow! Staying in Dragon Lake City for a day requires 1,000 origin condensation pills. Duan Tianliang muttered. "This is daylight robbery." Everyone stood in the distance and hadn't arrived at the city gate. But Duan Tianliang's words were heard by a guard at the city gate. This guard glanced coldly towards them with an icy cold expression. Duan Tianliang was shocked and shrunk his neck. Su Zimo took a deep breath and said, "Let's go, enter the city." "Alright." Yu Hao and the others agreed. Su Zimo said, "All of you came here with me this time, so I'll pay the origin condensation pills for all of you to enter the city this time." Su Zimo's gains from annihilating the Zuyanggu army this time were rather plentiful, and he'd obtained a great deal of useful information from Yu Hao's group of 3, so these origin condensation pills ought to be paid by him. Yu Hao's group of 3 was slightly hesitant and was just about to decline. Su Zimo had already taken out some origin condensation pills from his storage pouch and passed them to the guard at the city gate. End of chapter. Chapter 1835. Su Zimo had a total of 5 people on this trip, so he had to take out 5,000 origin condensation pills. Su Zimo passed over the storage pouch that contained the origin condensation pills, and at the same time, he sent a voice transmission with his divine sense. "Exalted Immortal, please make an exception. There are 6,000 origin condensation pills inside." Just now, it was extremely likely that this guard would come to make things difficult for them after hearing Duan Tianliang's complaints. Su Zimo didn't want to become enemies with these Dragon Lake City guards and come into conflict with them. Presently, entering the city smoothly was the most important to him. This guard originally wanted to make things difficult for Su Zimo's group. But he suddenly heard Su Zimo's voice transmission, and his expression eased up slightly as he nodded to Su Zimo and said, "Little cultivator, you're rather tactful." This person didn't say anything and condensed 5 command tokens with an immortal art. Then he passed them to Su Zimo and said, "You're only allowed to stay in Dragon Lake City for a day, go on in." Su Zimo received the command tokens and expressed his thanks before entering Dragon Lake City with Yu Hao and the others. Compared to the desolation outside the city, Dragon Lake City was extremely bustling. Su Zimo's group had just entered the city when they saw many cultivators setting up stalls on both sides of the road and loudly hawking their wares. Talismans, magic treasures, cultivation techniques, and various other things were sold. Everywhere their gazes passed, they were able to see cultivators of all shapes and sizes. This enormous city was actually filled with a sea of people, and it was extraordinarily bustling. In the entire Dragon Lake Star, there's only this one true city. The numerous cultivators on Dragon Lake Star are like going to a market, and they'll try their best to gather here. Yu Hao said amidst the clamorous noise. Here, origin condensation pills are considered to be the currency in circulation. If you want to buy something, you can exchange it with origin condensation pills. Gu Wenjun said, "Fighting and killing is prohibited in Dragon Lake City. Once someone attacks, the city guards will immediately arrive and expel the cultivator. If the situation is serious, the city guards might even make a move and kill the cultivator on the spot." Xin Fei continued. "If you want to fight, wait until the veil of night descends, and there'll be a dark night market in Dragon Lake City. After pausing for a while, Shen Fei winked at Su Zimo and said with a strange smile, "Everything is there. I heard that there are also some beauties." Cough cough. Gu Wenjun's face sank. She coughed lightly and said in a deep voice, "Let's talk business." Shen Fei hurriedly put away his smile and said seriously, "In the Dark Night House, there will be an auction. There would be many rare and precious treasures at the auction. Once the auction is over, an arena will be set up. As long as both sides agree to it, they can enter the arena and fight to the death, regardless of life or death." Su Zimo frowned slightly and asked, "Dragon Lake City doesn't care about this Dark Knight workshop?" "Don't care." Yu Hao shook his head and said, "I heard that many guards and exalted immortals of Dragon Lake City would occasionally go to the Eventide workshop to relax." Su Zimo nodded and chatted with Yu Hao and the others as they walked. His gaze was casually looking at the stalls on both sides of the road. Suddenly, Su Zimo's gaze squinted as his footsteps stopped before a stall, and then he squatted down and looked over. Yu Hao and the others were watching from the side as well. This stall owner was a middle-aged man, and there were some talismans, a few magic treasures, spirit pills, and even some rocks and minerals placed on the stall. "Fellow Taoist, what have you taken a fancy to?" Su Zimo picked up a low-grade profound rank magic treasure and looked at it carefully, and he seemed to be rather fond of it. After looking at it for a short while, Su Zimo asked, "Fellow Taoist, how much is this magic treasure?" Even though this sword is low-grade profound rank, it's extremely sharp, and it's a high-grade profound rank magic treasure. The middle-aged stall owner said, "This sword is at least 20,000 origin condensation pills. You're really asking for an exorbitant price." The nearby Shen Fei couldn't continue listening, and he sneered. "The price of a low-grade profound rank magic treasure is 10,000 origin condensation pills. Stop bluffing. Do you really think we don't know the market price? This sword of mine is different." The middle-aged stall owner's face flushed red when his thoughts were exposed. However, he still braced himself and argued. Su Zimo shook his head gently and pretended to be troubled as he sighed. 20,000 origin condensation pills is truly a little expensive. Thereafter, Su Zimo put down the sword and looked at other things. His palm seemed to be casually rummaging, but suddenly, he picked up a tortoiseshell the size of a face and asked with a frown, "Fellow Taoist, what is this?" The middle-aged stall owner glanced at it and said, "This tortoiseshell has an extraordinary origin. I chanced upon it in an ancient ruin." "Stop bragging," Shen Fei sneered. "So, all of your items have such a great background?" Su Zimo frowned. "Why isn't there any reaction from this tortoiseshell after I injected heaven and earth essence chi into it? What's the use of this thing?" "Fellow Taoist, you don't know," the middle-aged stall owner said. "If the secrets of such a miraculous item can be discovered casually, it would be worthless. You have to buy such a treasure and study it carefully before you can comprehend its mysteries." "Oh." Su Zimo smiled and asked in a seemingly casual manner, "How much is this tortoiseshell?" Just as the middle-aged stall owner was about to speak, he rolled his eyes and said, "If you buy that sword for 20,000 origin condensation pills, I'll give this tortoiseshell to you as a gift. Brother Su, let's go." When Yu Hao saw that Su Zimo was about to fall for it, he did not care too much and addressed him as brother before pulling Su Zimo away. Unexpectedly, Su Zimo took out a storage bag and threw it in front of the middle-aged stall owner. 20,000 origin condensation pills. "I'll buy." The middle-aged stall owner was stunned and could not believe it. He opened the storage bag and took a look. Indeed, there were 20,000 origin condensation pills. He had picked up the tortoiseshell casually and it was completely useless. The price of that longsword was around 10,000 soul-condensing pills. To think that this delicate-looking cultivator before him would be so easily fooled to spend 20,000 origin condensation pills on an inferior-grade mystic-grade dermic treasure. At that thought, the middle-aged stall owner put away the 20,000 origin condensation pills hurriedly and threw the sword and tortoiseshell to Su Zimo. He was afraid that Su Zimo would go back on his words. Ugh! When they saw that, Yu Hao and the other two exchanged glances and could only sigh helplessly. Now that both parties had lost their money, It was useless even if they wanted to persuade them. Hold on. Right then, a feminine voice sounded from not far away. Immediately after, a young man barged over and reached out, grabbing the tortoiseshell that was thrown towards Su Zimo in midair. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes and extended his hand, tapping gently on the young man's wrist. Su Zimo's finger was no different from a divine weapon. Realizing how powerful it was, the young man retracted his hand hurriedly. Su Zimo kept the tortoiseshell in his storage bag and glared at the young man coldly. End of chapter. Chapter 1836. The fight between Su Zimo and the young man was extremely short. They had separated before they even came into contact. Although it attracted the attention of many, it did not cause too much of a commotion. Yu Hao and company looked at the young man opposite them and were alarmed. Their expressions changed slightly. Taoist Su, this is the young master of Mystic Een Mountain, Ding Yu. Be careful. Yu Hao hurriedly sent a voice transmission to Su Zimo to warn him. Mystic Een Mountain was one of the 8 major factions on the Dragon Abyss planet. It was as famous as Xianggu. Ding Yu's cultivation was at the 6th level of the Mystic Een realm, but he was guarded by a rank 7 Mystic Immortal. That person looked at Su Zimo with an unfriendly expression. Behind the two of them were more than a dozen rank 5 and rank 6 Mystic Immortal guards from Mystic Een Mountain. Shen Fei also secretly sent a voice transmission. This person is not to be trifled with. It's best to avoid conflict with him. Beside Ding Yu stood a young woman. She had fair skin and her eyes flickered with a divine light. She had an otherworldly aura and a radiant face. Although this young woman was a rank 6 Mystic Immortal, she stood beside Ding Yu. Be it her aura or status, she seemed to be different from the guards of Mystic Een Mountain. Behind this young woman stood an old man. He was also a rank 7 Mystic Immortal with a lowered head and an expressionless face. Gu Wenjun's gaze swept across the young woman's waist and froze slightly. That woman might be from Heaven Fire Hall. Gu Wenjun secretly sent a voice transmission. Furthermore, from the looks of it, this woman has a very high status in Heaven Fire Hall. She actually has a rank 7 Mystic Immortal as a guard. Heaven Fire Hall, like Mystic Een Mountain and Xianggu, was one of the 8 major factions. You don't recognize me? Ding Yu's expression was cold as he stared at Su Zimo and asked faintly. Su Zimo said indifferently, Mystic Een Mountain's young master, I've just heard of your great name. Very good. Ding Yu nodded and said, in that case, hand over the tortoiseshell. Don't worry, Ding Yu, we'll definitely not let you suffer. Just now, you bought a low-grade profound rank sword and a tortoiseshell for 20,000 condensing pills. Ding Yu took out a storage bag and said, there are 40,000 essence condensation pills in this storage bag. I don't want that mystic low-grade sword, I only want that tortoiseshell. With that, Ding Yu casually tossed the storage pouch to Su Zimo. Su Zimo's expression didn't change. He leaned slightly to the side and avoided the attack. This storage bag containing 40,000 essence condensation pills fell directly to the ground. Ding Yu's face darkened as he narrowed his eyes and asked, what do you mean? Nothing. Su Zimo said, I don't want to sell this turtle shell. Ding Yu's gaze was cold as he said frostily, Brat, I think you're courting death. At this moment, the young woman beside Ding Yu took a step forward and cupped her fists at Su Zimo. She said, fellow Taoist, I'm Jiang Li from the Heaven Fire Hall. May I know how much you are willing to sell this tortoiseshell? Jiang Li? So it's her. No wonder she has such an aura. Who is she? The daughter of the Heaven Fire Hall's Hall Master. Although she's a woman, I heard that she has inherited the Heaven Fire Hall's Hall Master's true teachings and has never tasted defeat at the Mystic Origin Realm Level 6. Discussions could be heard from the crowd. Little Li, don't say anything to him. Don't worry, I'll definitely get this tortoiseshell for you. Ding Yu said in a deep voice. Su Zimo ignored Ding Yu and said to Jiang Li, sorry, I'll say the same thing. I don't want to sell this tortoiseshell. A look of disappointment flashed through Jiang Li's eyes, but she did not insist. At this moment, a group of Dragon Lake City guards walked over from not far away. They were clad in armor and wielded spears with cold expressions. These guards opened a path with their spears and spears, instantly splitting the crowd apart. Who's causing trouble? The leader had a stern expression and sharp gaze. He looked at Su Zimo, Ding Yu and the rest and asked slowly. Su Zimo scanned with his spirit consciousness and realized that the leader of the guards had a cultivation at the Mystic Origin Realm Level 8. So, it's Commander Lu. When Ding Yu saw this person, the arrogance he had just now vanished instantly. He immediately revealed a flattering smile and went forward to bow. I'm Ding Yu. Greetings, Commander Lu. It's been a long time. Please accept this small gift, Commander Lu. As he said that, Ding Yu took out a storage bag and handed it over. Commander Lu received it naturally and opened the storage bag to take a look. He nodded with a satisfied expression and kept it with a flip of his palm. Su Zimo frowned slightly. This commander of Dragon Lake City actually accepted the gift that Ding Yu handed over in front of everyone without caring about the gazes of others. The surrounding cultivators were even calmer, as though they were already used to this scene. Fellow Taoist Su, please don't become enemies with the guards of Dragon Lake City. When Yu Hao saw that Su Zimo's expression was off, he hurriedly sent a voice transmission to remind him. Although Dragon Lake City is a remote city under the jurisdiction of Azure Cloud County, it belongs to the Dajin Immortal Kingdom and we can't afford to offend it. Many of these guard commanders are native exalted immortals. In their eyes, our lives are like ants that can be crushed to death at will. Su Zimo was expressionless. Even if Yu Hao did not remind him, he would not offend Commander Lu. On one hand, Commander Lu's cultivation had reached the Mystic Origin Realm Level 8. On the other hand, this was Dragon Lake City. Becoming enemies with the guard commanders of Dragon Lake City here was completely courting death. Even with his capabilities, it would be difficult for him to escape unscathed. Commander Lu accepted Ding Yu's storage bag and asked with a relaxed expression, "What's going on here?" Ding Yu smiled hurriedly. "Commander Lu, it's just a small matter. Transactions in the city are based on first come, first served. Initially, I took a liking to an item first. To think that this blind thing would buy that item first when I wasn't paying attention. Fellow Taoist, you're distorting the truth." Yu Hao stood out and said in a deep voice, "You weren't here when we were conversing with this stall owner." "Is that so? Why don't you ask the stall owner who came first?" Ding Yu sneered and turned to look at the middle-aged stall owner with a threatening gaze. The middle-aged stall owner lamented internally. He knew that Su Zimo and the others were the ones who bought it first. However, the situation was pressing and Ding Yu had the support of Commander Lu. As such, he did not dare to speak the truth and could only stammer with a troubled expression. Suddenly, Commander Lu said, "All right, this isn't a big deal. If you guys insist on your opinions, you can go to Tenebrous Night Workshop to fight. That's fair for all of you." A commotion broke out in the crowd. Although Commander Lu said that it was fair on the surface, it was a fight to the death in Tenebrous Night Workshop. Furthermore, Su Zimo's cultivation was at the Mystic Origin Realm Level 5. No matter how one looked at it, this was not a fair fight. "I'm fine with it." Ding Yu agreed immediately and was somewhat excited. "Do you have a problem?" Commander Lu looked at Su Zimo and said indifferently, "If you refuse, hand over that item and return it to Ding Yu right now. There's only one more update today. Everyone, sleep early." End of chapter. Chapter 1837. Are you going to do it personally? Su Zimo turned to look at Ding Yu, who was not far away. Ding Yu raised his head slightly and declared proudly, "Of course. I'll take back what belongs to me personally and give it to Shaoli." Su Zimo nodded without hesitation. "Sure." Yu Hao and the others remained silent. They had witnessed Su Zimo's methods with their own eyes. Even in a head-on fight, Ding Yu might not be a match for Su Zimo. Ding Yu was extremely confident and did not take Su Zimo seriously. In his opinion, the reason why Su Zimo agreed so readily was because Su Zimo did not have a second choice under the pressure of Commander Lu. Commander Lu nodded slightly, feeling very satisfied. In his eyes, be it Ding Yu or Su Zimo, they were merely servants. However, Ding Yu was a tactful servant. Cultivation was boring, especially on a remote dragon abyss star like Azure Cloud County. Even though they were the guards of the great Gene Immortal Kingdom, they did not have much entertainment. Being able to watch these servants fight with their lives on the line was one of the few pleasures they had. That green-robed cultivator looks familiar. Suddenly, a voice sounded from the crowd. Immediately after, another person said, "That seems to be the person the wolf army is after. His name is Su Zimo." Indeed, he does look similar. That's him. A series of discussions broke out in the crowd. At that moment, countless gazes landed on Su Zimo. There was passion, enmity, greed, killing intent, and sympathy. Any mystic immortal would be tempted by a bounty of 100,000 essence formation elixirs. More and more cultivators gathered. Under the gazes of so many people, Yu Hao and the others who stood beside Su Zimo felt waves of pressure and were flustered. It was hard to imagine what kind of pressure Su Zimo, who was at the heart of the storm, would have to endure. The few of them subconsciously looked at Su Zimo, and they were all shocked. Under such circumstances, Su Zimo's expression was still calm, and he seemed to be unable to sense the hostile gazes of everyone. He was calm and composed. This person's temperament and courage are truly rare. In the crowd, a yellow-robed woman nodded slightly and said softly. There were more than 10 cultivators surrounding the yellow-robed woman, vaguely protecting her. A tall and sturdy middle-aged man stood behind the yellow-robed woman. He looked very powerful, and his eyes were bright and full of expression. "Mrs. Wright, this person is somewhat unusual," the middle-aged man said in a low voice. Not far from the yellow-robed woman, there was a group of people. The person in the middle was also a beautiful woman. She seemed to have a prominent position and was surrounded by people. She wore a light blue long dress that reached the ground, and there was a faint electric light flickering in her eyes. The blue-robed woman seemed to have heard what the yellow-robed woman said, and she suddenly smiled. Big Sister Su is right. Unfortunately, this person's cultivation is slightly low. Now that he's offended Ding Yu and is being pursued by the wolf army, he's truly not worth befriending. The yellow-robed woman smiled and did not argue, and she asked instead, "Little Sister Yuan, you're here for that thing as well?" "Of course." The blue-robed woman smiled. "Isn't the reason why the 8 great powers are gathered in Dragon Lake City at this time?" The yellow-robed woman said, "That's not entirely the case. According to my knowledge, the people from Zuyanggu aren't here. Big Sister Su, I'll see you at Dark Night Workshop. I hope you'll show mercy at that time." The blue-robed woman spoke before turning and leaving. The conversation between the two of them was impossible to distinguish amidst the clamorous and chaotic crowd. However, Su Zimo possessed Qinglian's true body and his hearing was terrifying, so he clearly captured the conversation between the two of them amidst the clamorous crowd. Even though their conversation was short, it revealed quite a bit of information. This time round, it seemed like a treasure had appeared and was going to be auctioned at Dark Night Workshop. That was the reason why the 8 great powers of Dragon Lake Planet were gathered here. By the looks of it, the 8 great powers valued that treasure extremely highly. The people sent over were all influential figures of the various great powers as well. For example, Ding Yu, Jiang Li and Chen Xianyang, who had an arm severed by Su Zimo, were all young masters and daughters of the various great powers. "So, it's you." When Ding Yu heard the discussions around him, he could not help but laugh loudly. "Seems like the bounty of 100,000 essence condensation elixirs belongs to me. Ha!" In Ding Yu's opinion, Su Zimo was already a dead man. "You'd better not leave the city." Ding Yu looked at Su Zimo with a smile. "There are countless pairs of eyes staring at you right now. The moment you make a move, I guarantee that you'll be torn into pieces by many cultivators. You'll only have a chance of survival if you fight with me at Dark Night Workshop." After saying that, Ding Yu laughed loudly and left smugly. As he said, he was not worried about Su Zimo leaving Dragon Lake City. Now that Su Zimo's identity was exposed, there were countless people who wanted to make a move on Su Zimo for the bounty of 100,000 essence condensation elixirs from the vicious wolf army. Everyone could not make a move in Dragon Lake City. However, once they left Dragon Lake City, they could kill as they wished even at the city gates. Following Ding Yu's departure, the crowd gradually dispersed as well. However, in reality, there were still many cultivators loitering nearby, watching Su Zimo's movements. Yu Hao and the others had grim expressions. The current situation was extremely disadvantageous for them. Even if they could survive the calamity at Dark Knight Workshop, they would most likely be hunted down by many cultivators the moment they left Dragon Lake City. Fellow Daoist Su. Right then, a soft call sounded from behind Su Zimo. Su Zimo turned around. A group of cultivators walked over from not far away. The person in the lead wore yellow robes and had a faint smile on his face as he cupped his fists towards Su Zimo from afar. Yu Hao glanced at the patterns on the sleeves of the group of cultivators and his gaze narrowed as he said in a low voice, "These are people from Twin Dragon Sect." Twin Dragon Sect, one of the 8 major factions. Twin Dragon Sect was founded by 2 Grade 8 mystic immortals. It was said that the 2 of them were sworn brothers with dragon blood flowing in their bodies and were extremely strong. For example, the various top factions on Dragon Lake Planet would usually have unique symbols on their uniforms and badges. There was a divine dragon embroidered on each of the sleeves of Twin Dragon Sect. What's going on? Why are all the major factions on Dragon Lake Planet here in the city at this time? Shen Fei muttered softly. The yellow-robed woman approached with a smile. I'm Su Wan from Twin Dragon Sect. Gu Wenjun sent a voice transmission with her spirit consciousness. I heard that one of the sect masters of Twin Dragon Sect has the surname Su. I'm Su Zimo. Su Zimo cupped his fists and returned the greeting with a questioning gaze. Su Wan smiled gently and asked, Fellow Daoist Su, are you confident about tonight's battle? It's all right. Su Zimo replied ambiguously. Su Wan sent a voice transmission. If you trust me, I can secretly send you out of the city to avoid this battle. Su Zimo looked at Su Wan deeply. Su Wan's gaze was sincere and did not avoid it at all. This surprised Su Zimo. Given the current situation, there were countless people who wanted to take his life in exchange for the high bounty of the Wolf Army. To think that there would be someone willing to step forward and help him. 2K Reading Network. Chapter 1838. Thank you for your kind intentions, Su Zimo declined tactfully. However, I still want to check out Tenebrous Night House. When Su Wan saw Su Zimo's rejection, she did not mention the matter anymore and went with the flow. From what I know, apart from Zuyengu, many cultivators from the 8 major factions of Dragon Abyss Planet are here to participate in Tenebrous Night House. Do you know why, fellow Daoist Su? I don't know. Su Zimo shook his head. Please enlighten me, fellow Daoist. Su Wan said, there's a treasure being auctioned at Tenebrous Night House this time round. It's a leaf from the Suo tree. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. The Suo tree was one of the 3 sacred trees of the Buddhist monasteries. Legend has it that the Buddha was once born under the Ashoka tree and comprehended the Tao under the Bodhi tree. Eventually, he attained nirvana and transcended under the Suo tree. Every single one of these 3 holy trees possessed unimaginable power. In Tianhuang mainland, a single withered Ashoka flower contained the power of life, allowing Su Zimo to reconstruct Jin Dan. Of course, in a small world like Tianhuang mainland, there was no way he could come into contact with the 3 sacred trees. In Tianhuang mainland, a single Ashoka flower was already an utmost treasure of the Buddhist monasteries. To think that he would obtain traces of another sacred tree of the Buddhist monasteries, the Suo tree, the moment he ascended to the upper world and on the remote Dragon Abyss planet. Even though it was just a leaf, there was definitely a great amount of power contained within this leaf. More importantly, the Buddha had once attained nirvana under the Suo tree. If he could obtain that leaf, would it provide him with unexpected help in comprehending the perfection of Nirvana Sutra as well? The Suo tree is one of the 3 sacred trees of the Buddhist monasteries. When Su Wan saw that Su Zimo was silent, she thought that he had not heard of the Suo tree and explained the background of the tree briefly. After pausing for a moment, she continued, if you can obtain the leaf of the Suo tree, you'll be able to gather heaven and earth essence chi and make the surrounding essence chi richer. With that, be it the growth of immortal herbs or cultivation speed, There will be an increase. Oh! Su Zimo raised his eyebrows. Su Wan said, vitality-nurturing grass and rainflower take 100 years to mature. It is said that with the help of this leaf, the maturation period of these two immortal herbs can be shortened by 10 years. Amazing! Su Zimo exclaimed in admiration. Duan Tianliang, Big Yellow, and Ing Zhao all had strange looks on their faces. Among the people present, only the three of them knew about Su Zimo's background. According to Su Wan, the two immortal herbs would mature in 90 years after obtaining the leaves of the Suo Luo tree. And the immortal herbs around Su Zimo would mature in a year. Just by shortening the time by 10 years, it would attract the people from the 8 major forces of Dragon Abyss Planet to gather here. If news of Su Zimo's ability were to spread out, it would probably alarm the earthly immortals and heaven immortals. Of course, even if the Suo Luo leaf could not help him in accelerating the growth of the herbs, he still wanted to get his hands on it. The leaf had a very special meaning to his cultivation. However, from the looks of it, there were at least 7 major forces fighting for this leaf. When the time came, it would be very difficult to obtain it. Fellow Taoist Su, have you joined any forces? If not, why don't you join the Twin Dragon sect? Su Wan invited. If you're willing to join our sect, the Twin Dragon sect will definitely lend a hand in this crisis and try our best to resolve it for you. Thank you for your kind offer. Su Zimo brought his fists together and said, let me think about it. Su Wan did not force him. She said, if you've made up your mind, you can look for me at any time. The two of them exchanged a few more words before bidding farewell to each other. Miss, although this person is brave, he's only a rank 5 mystic immortal and has a bad relationship with the evil wolf army. Why did you take the initiative to recruit him? After Su Zimo left, the middle-aged man behind Su Wan asked with a frown. I don't know either. Su Wan said thoughtfully, I just feel that this person is a little special. Actually, Su Wan had inherited her father's bloodline and had a stream of dragon blood flowing in her body. And Su Zimo had the dragon phoenix primordial spirit. Even a true divine dragon would have to bow before the dragon phoenix, let alone the fact that Su Wan only had a stream of dragon blood in her body. Therefore, the moment Su Wan saw Su Zimo, she had a special feeling. Under Yu Hao's lead, Su Zimo arrived at a mansion in Dragon Lake City and handed over more than 3 million immortal herbs in exchange for more than 300,000 essence condensation elixirs. Including the essence condensation elixirs he obtained from the Zhuanggu army, he already had close to 500,000 essence condensation elixirs in his storage bag. These essence condensation elixirs were enough for him to cultivate for a long time. Fellow Taoist Su, if you can obtain the protection of the Twin Dragon sect, you might truly have a chance to resolve this calamity. Yu Hao analyzed. Yu Hao and the others were not worried about the battle between Su Zimo and Ding Yu. In their opinion, even if Su Zimo was defeated, he would be able to preserve his life with the methods he had revealed earlier. The true danger was the pursuit of other cultivators after leaving Dragon Lake City. At that moment, they did not know that the Wolf Army had already received the news and was sending an army over. A protector of Zhuanggu was about to arrive at Dragon Lake City as well. Although Dragon Lake City seemed calm, there were already undercurrents surging. The subsequent developments of today's incident had completely exceeded everyone's expectations. After exchanging for the essence condensation elixirs, Su Zimo found a random place to rest and conserve his energy while waiting for night to arrive. In his boredom, Su Zimo took out the tortoiseshell from his storage bag and examined it carefully. Others might not be able to tell the uniqueness of the tortoiseshell, but Su Zimo had once cultivated the black tortoise phenomenon and possessed the innate divine power of the spirit tortoise shield. Instantly, he discovered that the patterns on the tortoiseshell were strange. Su Zimo stared at the patterns on the tortoiseshell for a long time and did not notice it even when night fell. It was only when Yu Hao nudged Su Zimo from the side that he woke up. Fellow Taoist Su, Tenebrous Night Workshop is already open. Yu Hao reminded. Shen Fei could not hold back his curiosity and asked, "What's so special about this tortoiseshell that you're so engrossed in it?" Su Zimo smiled and did not hide anything. The patterns on the tortoiseshell were actually carved by later generations, and there's a type of formation diagram recorded on it. The formation diagram recorded on the tortoiseshell was far from the formations of the lower realm and was extremely profound and mysterious. Even with Su Zimo's attainments in formations, it was quite difficult for him to understand it. That was the reason why he was so engrossed in it that he forgot about the passage of time. Let's go to Tenebrous Night Workshop. Su Zimo put away the tortoiseshell and stood up with a look of joy in his eyes. The value of this tortoiseshell was probably more than 20 million, let alone 20,000 essence condensation elixirs. Everyone followed the crowd, and before long, they arrived at an extremely ordinary-looking residence. However, after entering the residence, they saw a gigantic underground entrance. Everyone walked down the stairs, and after walking for a while, they heard a series of sounds. After turning a corner, the path ahead opened up and a gigantic extravagant palace stood not far away. It was brightly lit and filled with people. End of chapter. Chapter 1839. There were many guards around the palace, and none of them had low cultivation realms. If anyone dared to cause trouble here, the guards would attack immediately. Su Zimo and the others paused for a moment before heading towards the entrance of the underground palace. Previously, Yu Hao and the others had only heard of Tenebrous Night Workshop. This was the first time they were here, and they looked around curiously. The palace was bustling with activity. Although the palace was built underground, it was spacious and could accommodate at least tens of thousands of people. In the middle of the palace was a gigantic platform. At the top of the palace, there was an area for people to rest. There were all sorts of spirit fruits and immortal peaches that emitted a fragrance. Those seats were above the many cultivators below and had the best view. Only those with noble statuses could sit there. Many cultivators were already seated on those seats, and they were chatting with one another. Su Zimo could clearly see that there were even a few grade 8 mystic immortals among those cultivators. Yu Hao whispered, "Those who can sit there are usually exalted immortals of Dragon Lake City who are influential in the city. The 8 major factions are nothing in the eyes of those exalted immortals. Look at the young masters of those factions. They can only stand below." The surroundings of the platform were filled with people as well. Su Zimo swept his gaze. Before long, he caught sight of some familiar faces in the crowd below. Ding Yu of Mystic Een Mountain and Jiang Li of Heavenfire Hall each occupied an area. The two of them stood at the front with many cultivators guarding behind them. At the same time, Ding Yu caught sight of Su Zimo as well. Ding Yu sneered at Su Zimo and placed his palm below his neck, making a beheading gesture in a provocative manner. Su Zimo retracted his gaze and ignored him. Another group of people stood in the area beside Ding Yu. The leader was a young man with a ferocious appearance. He was the young master of Heaven Fiend sect, one of the 8 major factions. Brother Ding, to think that this lad would dare to accept the challenge. The methods of the young master of Heaven Fiend sect. Ding Yu smiled. He doesn't have a choice. Commander Lu personally gave the order. If he dares to disobey, then he's courting death. The Heaven Fiend sect's young sect master held a huge pork shoulder in his hand and ate until his mouth was covered in oil. He grinned and said, "Then this brother will wish you victory." Almost as soon as Su Zimo entered the palace, many people on the high platform looked over. Other than Xiangu, the Sky Scorpion Stockade, Thunder Shaking Hall, Twin Dragon Cult, Heaven Fiend Sect, Profound Een Mountain, Heavenfire Hall, and Profound Light Sect were all present. "Fellow Taoist Su, this way." At this moment, a soft cry came from the crowd. Not far away, the Twin Dragon Sect's Su Wanning waved at Su Zimo. Although the people from the major forces were also standing below, they were all close to the high platform. They each occupied an area and had a good view. Su Zimo hesitated for a moment before walking over. Ding Yu and the others sneered when they saw this. A hint of surprise flashed through the eyes of the blue-dressed woman from Thunder Shaking Hall as well. In the eyes of everyone, Su Zimo was already a dead man. Nobody expected that the Twin Dragon Cult would choose to befriend Su Zimo at this moment. At this moment, everyone was gathered in the hall. However, The auction of Dark Knight House had yet to begin. Before long, a group of people walked in slowly from the entrance of the palace. The person in the lead was Commander Lu from before. At this moment, Commander Lu had already changed out of his armor and put on an ordinary brocade robe as he walked towards the high platform. "Brother Lu, you're late. Everyone was waiting for you." On the seat, a square-faced burly man greeted Commander Lu. Su Wanning whispered, "This is the other commander of Dragon Lake City. His name is Yan Fei and his status is similar to Commander Lu." Yan Fei said, "Brother Lu, I heard that you even arranged a battle today?" Commander Lu smiled faintly. "It's just a casual game. Brother Yan, do you want to bet with me?" "Oh? What are we betting on?" Yan Fei asked. Commander Lu said, "Let's bet on your rainbow light sword art. If I win, how about you lend it to me to take a look?" "Ha." Yan Fei laughed out loud and said, "You've been coveting my sword technique for quite some time now. You've really got a good plan. I heard that there's a difference of an entire cultivation realm between the two of them today." Commander Lu said, "We can change the bet and bet that Ding you can kill that person in a few rounds." "That's interesting." Yan Fei rubbed his chin in deep thought. Both of them were in high positions and did not conceal their conversation. Although Su Zimo and the others were in the crowd, they heard their conversation clearly. Su Wanning smiled bitterly and sent a voice transmission secretly, "Fellow Taoist Su, in their eyes, people like us who ascended from the lower worlds are just toys. These exalted immortals will often arrange such battles and set up bets. This is also one of their pleasures." Su Zimo was silent. To be precise, exalted immortals like Commander Lu did not treat them as humans at all. "Everyone, please be silent." At this moment, a pleasant voice came from the high platform. Unknowingly, a woman had already arrived on the high platform. She wore a thin veil that revealed her alluring figure and her red lips were alluring. She was extremely charming and seductive. Shen Fei's gaze was fixated and he could not help but swallow his saliva. "Exalted immortals, you've all taken your seats. Today's auction will officially begin." The veiled woman smiled gently. Su Wan whispered, "Usually, the battles between cultivators will only begin after the auction ends." Su Zimo nodded. On the high platform, the veiled woman waved gently. Not far away, a young girl walked over and ascended the high platform with light steps. She held a tray with both hands that was covered by a black cloth and no one knew what was inside. The first item for auction is a cultivation technique, the Heavenly Thunder Dragon Tiger Sutra, superior grade yellow grade. The veiled woman lifted the black cloth and revealed an ancient book inside. There were 4 grades of cultivation techniques: Heaven, Earth, Mystic, and Yellow. Each grade was further divided into superior grade and inferior grade. Right now, most of the cultivation techniques cultivated by cultivators on Dragon Abyss Planet were unorthodox and could not even be considered as inferior grade cultivation techniques. The moment the Heavenly Thunder Dragon Tiger Sutra appeared, it attracted the attention of many cultivators. The blue-dressed woman from Thunderquake Hall was invigorated as she glared at the ancient tree with a burning gaze. The starting price of this cultivation technique is 500,000 essence formation pills. The veiled woman said slowly, "Good lad, the starting price is 500,000 essence formation pills." Duan Tunliang shuddered and nearly bit his tongue. Su Zimo frowned slightly as well. Even the number of essence formation pills in his storage bag was less than 500,000. Of course, he was not interested in the ancient tree. Although he did not know the grade of the Perfection of Wisdom Nirvana Sutra, it was definitely above Earth grade and could even be a Heaven grade cultivation technique. If not for that, it would not have been able to subdue Yin and Yang and fuse the essence spirits of the Dragon Phoenix and Qinglian. End of chapter. Chapter 1840. The auction continued. After an intense fight, the blue-dressed woman from the Thunderquake Hall spent 3 million pills to obtain the Heavenly Thunder Dragon Tiger scripture. Following that, some immortal pills, talismans, Dharma treasures and other items were displayed one by one in the auction. Every single treasure was sold for a price of several million essence condensation pills. Many cultivators from the various major factions bid as well. However, it was obvious that the major factions were holding back as they waited for the final treasure, the Su-A Luo leaf. At this moment, another item was placed on the table. This item looked dull and lusterless, like a broken piece of a bronze mirror that had fallen off. Initially, Su Zimo did not feel much about this mirror. However, the moment this mirror was displayed, the bronze square cauldron in his sea of consciousness reacted. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes slightly. Previously, the bronze square cauldron reacted as such when he found a broken sword in the storage bag of the commander of the wolf army. Later on, the bronze square cauldron smelted the broken sword directly. Immediately after, the divine dragon on the outer wall of the bronze square cauldron awakened and taught him an extremely powerful movement technique, the true dragon's 9 flashes. It was obvious that some Dharma treasures and weapons were required to repair the bronze square cauldron. However, the profound-grade Dharma treasures that Su Zimo had collected did not react at all when placed in the bronze square cauldron, regardless of their grade. He still did not know what kind of Dharma treasures and weapons were required to repair the bronze square cauldron. What's this? This is just a fragment. What's so special about it? Some of the cultivators below could not help but ask out of curiosity. The veiled woman smiled charmingly and said, "Everyone, please calm down and answer my question first. Do you know what's above the heaven immortal realm?" The crowd fell silent instantly. Many cultivators looked at each other in confusion. They only knew of the mystic immortals, earth immortals and heaven immortals. They had not even seen an earth immortal expert before, let alone a heaven immortal. "I heard that it's a perfected immortal?" Not long after, a voice sounded from the crowd. It was the young master of the Mystic Light sect. "That's right." The veiled woman nodded slightly and said, "Above the heaven immortal realm is the perfected immortal expert. Everyone, do you know what grade magic treasures true immortal experts use?" Everyone shook their heads and discussed in low voices. The profound light sect's young master suddenly had an idea and said loudly, "As we all know, profound immortals use profound grade magic treasures, earth immortals use earth grade magic treasures, heaven immortals use heaven grade magic treasures, and so on. True immortals should use truth-grade magic treasures." Heh! A burst of laughter came from the high seats. How ignorant! Commander Lu and the others looked at the young master of the profound light sect with disdain, as if they were looking at an idiot. Being ridiculed like this in front of everyone, the profound light sect's young master's face flushed red, feeling like he had lost all face. But the other party was the commander of Dragon Lake City, so he didn't dare get angry. He could only lower his head and lightly grit his teeth, and he was vexed in his heart. The veiled woman said in a low voice, "The weapons used by true immortals are called psychic magic treasures, also known as spirit treasures." Psychic magic treasure. Su Zimo's heart stirred. Suddenly he recalled that back in Tianhuang mainland, when Dai Yu fought against many experts of the upper world, an ancient bell descended. Dai Yu had once reprimanded that the person did not dare to descend with his true body and merely used a psychic magic treasure to test the waters. In that case, the person who attacked should be a perfected immortal expert. The veiled woman continued, "A psychic magic treasure means that it has spirituality and spirit consciousness within it. 4 Dharma treasures as such, their powers will increase tremendously and they possess many unimaginable mysteries. As for this mirror, it's a spirit treasure shard. The other Dharma treasures were merely weapons and inanimate objects. However, a psychic magic treasure was a living object with a life of its own." Su Zimo's eyes lit up and he suddenly came to a realization. The bronze square tripod should be a psychic magic treasure. That was because without Su Zimo's control, the tripod could refine weapons on its own to repair itself. Wasn't that a form of spirituality? Wasn't that the legendary psychic magic treasure? At the same time, Su Zimo vaguely guessed something. In order to repair the bronze square tripod, the weapon required had to be at least a psychic magic treasure. Back then, during his ascension, the expert who tried to kill him was clearly stronger than a perfected immortal. It was the immortal king that the mysterious woman mentioned. The bronze square tripod was able to repair one of its walls because it devoured an immortal king weapon. Given Su Zimo's current strength, there was no way he would have the chance to come into contact with an immortal king weapon. In fact, he had only obtained a shard of a psychic magic treasure. There was still a long way to go before he could repair the bronze square tripod completely. Even if it's a spirit treasure shard, it's completely useless. What can this shard be used for? It's definitely useless. If it was a true treasure, the exalted immortals in the city would have kept it a long time ago. After the veiled woman said that, the crowd below began discussing as well. The veiled woman smiled gently. No matter what, this is a shard of a psychic magic treasure. As for what mysteries it has, we can only leave it to the person who bought it to explore. How much is this? Someone asked. The starting bid for this spirit treasure shard is 1,000,000 essence condensation elixirs. The increment must not be less than 10,000, the veiled woman said. Everyone shook their heads. Nobody wanted to spend 1,000,000 essence condensation elixirs on a useless shard. After the veiled woman said that, nobody bid. I'll bid 1,000,000. Suddenly, a voice sounded from the crowd. Everyone turned towards the voice. It was the green-robed cultivator who wanted to fight with Dingyu. Su Wan looked at Su Zimo in shock as well. She had not expected that Su Zimo would bid for such a seemingly useless spirit treasure shard after remaining silent for an entire night. While this spirit treasure shard might be useless in the hands of others, it was extremely useful to Su Zimo. This person is truly carefree. He's about to die and yet, he's still participating in the auction. That's right. He should think about how he's going to survive later. Many cultivators shook their heads and mocked. This fellow Taoist has bid 1,000,000. Is there anyone who wants to bid higher? The veiled woman surveyed the crowd and asked loudly. 1,000,000. Right then, Dingyu spoke up and looked at Su Zimo with a smile. Raising his head slightly, his gaze was filled with mockery and provocation. He did not want this spirit treasure shard at all. The reason why he spoke up now was because he wanted to raise the price intentionally. He was not going to raise it much, merely 10,000. Su Zimo's expression was unchanged as he said indifferently, 3,000,000. A commotion broke out in the crowd. Nobody expected that this seemingly inconspicuous green-robed cultivator would be able to produce 3,000,000 essence condensation elixirs. He was only a grade 5 mystic immortal. How could a grade 5 mystic immortal have so many essence condensation elixirs? End of chapter. Chapter 1841. Ah! Dingyu suddenly sneered and said, how can a stage 5 mystic immortal like you casually take out 3,000,000 essence condensation pills? I think you're deliberately causing trouble at this auction. Dingyu did not say anything and directly accused him of a crime. Su Wan frowned slightly and hurriedly sent a voice transmission. Fellow Taoist Su, if you can't take out 3,000,000 essence condensation pills, it's better not to bid. Otherwise, you'll get into trouble. The veiled woman on the high platform looked at Su Zimo and asked with a smile, fellow Taoist, can you take out 3,000,000 essence condensation pills for me to take a look? Why should I? Shen Fei was a little indignant and asked, the others were also bidding just now. Why didn't you check the others? Dingyu and the others roared with laughter with disdain. The veiled woman was extremely patient and explained, the other cultivators are mostly from the large factions on the Dragon Abyss planet or have sufficient cultivation realms. But this fellow Taoist is only a stage 5 mystic immortal. 3,000,000 essence condensation pills is not a small number. Shen Fei wanted to argue, but Su Zimo raised his hand slightly and stopped him. Then, he threw a storage bag over and asked, take a look at these things. Are they worth 3,000,000 essence condensation pills? The veiled woman took the storage bag and scanned it with her spirit sense. Her delicate body trembled slightly and a trace of surprise flashed through her eyes. There were more than 1,000 mystic immortal treasures in this storage bag. Although they were all low-grade mystic immortal treasures, a low-grade mystic immortal treasure was worth about 10,000 essence condensation pills. In other words, The value of this storage bag was about 10 million essence condensation pills. The veiled woman's expression quickly returned to normal. She returned the storage bag to Su Zimo and said, "Fellow Taoist, please keep it well. You are indeed qualified to bid." Su Zimo had obtained more than 3,000 mystic immortal treasures from killing the Zhuanggu army. There was no need for him to take all of them out. He only took out 1,000 low-grade mystic immortal treasures and threw them over. The veiled woman's words shocked many cultivators. Even Su Wan turned around and looked deeply at Su Zimo. She realized that this green-clothed man seemed to be even more mysterious than she had imagined. The captains and exalted immortals sitting on the grandstands were not too bothered by the little episode that had taken place during the auction. However, Commander Yan Fei narrowed his eyes and secretly asked the veiled woman, "Li Ji, just now, what's in his storage bag?" Li Ji hurriedly sent a voice transmission with her divine sense and replied, "There are 1,000 low-grade profound rank magic treasures in that storage pouch." Yan Bei looked at Su Zimo in the crowd. His eyes flickered as he pondered. 3 million going once. Is there anyone who wants to bid higher? The veiled woman looked around and asked loudly. The auction continued. Ding Yu didn't expect to return empty-handed. He couldn't help but feel annoyed. Just as he was about to continue raising the price, the guard behind him secretly transmitted a message. "Young master, you can't." "What is it?" Ding Yu frowned. The guard said, "The most important thing for us to come here is to get the Sala tree back. There's no need to waste core condensing pills on this. Furthermore, so what if that person buys it? In a while, that person will still die in the hands of young master. Isn't his storage bag still yours?" Ding Yu came to a realization and nodded secretly. The guard continued, "If young master raises the price too high and that person can't afford it and suddenly backs off, we'll be the ones at a disadvantage." "You're right." Ding Yu smiled and decided not to raise the price. The veiled woman shouted twice more, but there was still no one who raised the price. Only then did she announce that the numinous treasure fragment belonged to Su Zimo. After bidding for the fragment, someone sent it to Su Zimo directly. Su Zimo took out 300 low-grade profound rank magic treasures from his storage bag and placed them in a storage bag before handing it over. Low-grade profound rank magic treasures could be exchanged for core condensing pills easily in Dragon Lake City. "Everyone, the next treasure is the leaf of one of the 3 sacred trees of the Buddhist monasteries, the Sala tree." Immediately after, the veiled woman finally lifted the veil of the treasure. On a crystal-clear jade plate, there was a palm-sized leaf. The leaf was rather strange. It was a compound leaf and was made up of 7 leaves. Nobody knew how long the leaf had been floating for, but it was already slightly yellow. Even so, many cultivators could still sense that the heaven-earth essence chi around the leaf had turned richer. Everyone from the major factions were invigorated and their gazes burned. Su Zimo noticed that and thought to himself, "By the looks of it, it's going to be difficult to bid for this Sala tree leaf." The veiled woman did not introduce further and said directly, "The starting bid for the Sala tree leaf is 10 million core condensing pills. Each increment must not be less than 100,000. *CK. Shen Fei exclaimed and nearly bit his tongue. Gu Wenjun was shocked as well as she whispered, "The starting bid is that high." Yu Hao explained softly, "The Sala tree leaf can accelerate the growth of immortal herbs and bring benefits to the major factions far more than 10 million core condensing pills. Furthermore, the longer it lasts, the greater the benefits." Su Wan nodded as well. "The only risk is that the Sala tree leaf is already slightly yellow. If we wait for it to wither completely, I'm afraid it won't have that effect anymore." Even so, the major factions scrambled for it and bid one after another. 11 million, 12 million, 15 million. As time passed by, the price of the Sala tree leaf increased. During this period of time, Su Wan even shouted a price once, but it was quickly suppressed by the other factions. Initially, the major factions bid quickly and the price rose steadily. However, later on, when the price rose to 30 million core condensing pills, the major factions increased the price more slowly and cautiously. In the end, 5 of the 7 major factions withdrew from the competition. Mystic Een Mountain and Mystic Light Sect were the only ones left. Even if he exchanged all the remaining Mystic-grade Dharma treasures in Su Zimo's storage bag, he would have less than 30 million core condensing pills. He had already given up on competing for the Sala tree leaf for the time being. Sister Su, who do you think this leaf will go to in the end? The blue-dressed woman from the Thunderquake Hall asked. Su Wan pondered and said, "It should be the Mystic Een Mountain." "What do you mean?" The blue-dressed woman was somewhat surprised. Su Wan said, "This time, Ding Yu and Jiang Li from the Heaven Fire Hall came together for this leaf. I'm guessing that these two factions have already joined forces. No matter how rich the Profound Light Sect is, it can't match the heritage of these two factions." As expected, not long after, when the price of the Sala tree leaf rose to 35 million core condensing pills, the Profound Light Sect withdrew. Ding Yu was overjoyed. Jiang Li from the Heaven Fire Hall also heaved a sigh of relief. End of chapter. Chapter 1842. The Suo Luo leaf had already been decided and tonight's auction was over. After this, it was time for the cultivators to fight. Commander Yan Fei suddenly said from a seat high up in the palace, "Brother Lu, what do you mean by the bet you mentioned just now? Are you interested, Brother Yan?" Commander Lu chuckled and said, "There's no doubt that Ding Yu will kill this person. Let's bet on how many rounds Ding Yu will take to kill this person." In Commander Lu's heart, killing a Stage 5 Mystic Immortal was as easy as flipping his hand given Ding Yu's capabilities. 10 rounds were enough. However, out of caution, he pondered for a moment before saying slowly, "I'll bet that Ding Yu will kill this person in 20 rounds. Yan Fei smiled. "All right, since that's the case, I'll bet that this person can last for 50 rounds. Haha." When he heard this, Commander Lu roared with laughter and said, "Brother Yan, you'll definitely lose this round. Looks like I'll have to take a look at your rainbow light sword technique." Yan Fei's expression was normal as he said, "If I lose, I'll naturally hand over the sword technique with both hands. What will you do if you lose?" "You've coveted my Blazing Sea heavenly pattern for many years. If I lose, I'll lend it to you." Commander Lu waved his hand and was extremely confident. "All right." Yan Fei's eyes lit up. If he could cultivate the Blazing Sea heavenly pattern, his cultivation would most likely improve and he might even have a chance to step into the 9th level of the Mystic Origin realm. Commander Lu stood up and said loudly, "There's no need to wait. Arrange for these subordinates to fight. The first round will be between Ding Yu and that person." With Commander Lu's status in Dragon Lake City, he could naturally change the arrangements as he pleased. Ding Yu was eager to give it a try and had an excited expression. Commander Lu looked at Ding Yu with a dignified expression and said in a deep voice, "Ding Yu, I have a bet with someone and I'll only give you 20 rounds. You'd better not disappoint me." "Don't worry, Commander Lu. There's no need for 20 rounds. 3 rounds are enough." Ding Yu was in high spirits and was filled with confidence as he said with cupped fists. Commander Lu was still worried and reminded, "Don't be careless and underestimate your opponent." "I'll follow Commander Lu's teachings." Ding Yu hurriedly bowed and said humbly. On the other side, Su Zimo, who was in the crowd, seemed to have sensed something. He frowned and turned to look at a higher seat. He saw a square-faced cultivator looking at him with a faint smile. It was Commander Yan Fei. In the palace, there was a sea of people, and it was very noisy. Others couldn't hear the bet between Yan Fei and Commander Lu, but Su Zimo heard it loud and clear. This Yan Fei seemed to know something, which was why he dared to make that bet with Commander Lu. The blue-robed woman from the Thunderclap Hall shook her head. She looked at Su Zimo and said, "You really shouldn't have accepted this battle. Do you know that unless one side dies in that arena, the battle will never end?" "What do you mean?" Yu Hao frowned and couldn't help but ask. Su Wan explained, "There's a restrictive formation in the arena. Once both parties enter the arena, the formation will activate and form a cage-like barrier around them. Unless there's only one person alive in the arena, the formation barrier will always exist." "Oh." Su Zimo replied with a calm expression, as though he didn't care. The blue-robed woman looked at Su Zimo with pity in her eyes. Haven't you realized the situation you're in? At that time, it's useless even if you want to admit defeat. You won't be able to escape even if you want to. Su Zimo still had an indifferent expression. On the other hand, Duan Tianliang, who was beside him, grinned and shook his head with a sigh. Sigh, this is bad. Someone's going to die. A hint of disappointment flashed through the blue-robed woman's eyes. Initially, he admired Su Zimo's courage and insight back in Dragon Lake City. Now that he looked at it, this person was probably slow to react and was not smart enough. Even the fatty who was a level 3 mystic immortal beside him sensed the danger, but this person was still oblivious. The blue-robed woman did not realize that Duan Tianliang was not referring to Su Zimo when he said, "Someone's going to die." All of a sudden, Su Zimo frowned slightly as a feeling of being spied on rose in his heart. He sensed an intense hostility and killing intent. He turned his head slowly and looked in a direction in the crowd. Quite a few cultivators were pointing at him and discussing among themselves. Su Zimo's gaze circled around those cultivators and finally landed on a skinny old man. That skinny old man looked no different from the surrounding crowd. The only difference was that his cultivation realm was slightly higher, a level 7 mystic immortal. Su Zimo retracted his gaze without batting an eyelid. At the same time, a cold glint flashed through the skinny old man's eyes as he thought to himself, "This lad has sharp senses." That skinny old man was Guardian Shui, who had rushed over from Zuying. At this moment, most of the cultivators in the palace were focused on Su Zimo and Ding Yu. However, Su Zimo was able to sense the abnormality and sense the killing intent from him despite the gazes of so many people. That was terrifying. "Both of you, please enter the arena." The veiled woman looked at Ding Yu and Su Zimo and said slowly. Ding Yu could not wait any longer. With a leap, he arrived at the high platform in the middle of the palace and looked down at Su Zimo with a provocative expression. "Fellow Taoist Su, watch out." Su Wan whispered. Su Zimo nodded slightly and walked out of the crowd. In a flash, he landed on the high platform with a light and agile movement technique. The moment Su Zimo stepped onto the arena, a series of formation patterns lit up on the high platform, forming a barrier that was filled with formation patterns around the high platform. In the blink of an eye, the arena turned into an airtight cage. Of the two people in this cage, only one would be able to leave alive. Ding Yu is going to make a killing this time round. That's right. That person's head is worth 100,000 essence formation elixirs. His storage bag even has a numinous treasure fragment that's worth 3 million essence formation elixirs. Once that person dies, everything will belong to Ding Yu. The cultivators below the arena were discussing amongst themselves. When he heard those voices, Ding Yu was even more delighted. He glared at Su Zimo with a ferocious gaze and smirked. "Lad, I'll let you witness my methods today." Mystic Een technique. A strange glint shone in Ding Yu's eyes as he waved his hands and conjured hand seals repeatedly, releasing the top immortal art of Mystic Een Mountain. Even against a grade 5 mystic immortal, he did not hold back. He wanted to kill Su Zimo in the shortest time possible. Boom! All of a sudden, Su Zimo took a step forward. When his feet landed on the ground, the gigantic high platform trembled and dust fell. A green figure closed in on Ding Yu rapidly. It was so fast that it tore through the air with a strange, ear-piercing howl. The green figure arrived instantly. Ding Yu's pupils constricted violently. A series of exclamations sounded from the crowd as well. Captain Lu's expression changed. His mind trembled as he stood up. Yan Fei's eyes lit up. It was way too fast. The burst of power was beyond everyone's expectations. Chapter 1843. Ding Yu released his mystic Een Dharma and a series of soft black chi appeared where Su Zimo was initially standing. With a chilling intent, it enveloped Su Zimo. However, Su Zimo was faster. By the time the soft black chi appeared, Su Zimo had already vanished from the spot and appeared before Ding Yu. The two of them were inches apart. Ding Yu's eyes were filled with deep panic and fear. To be precise, he was not a cultivator who ascended from the lower realm. He was born on the Dragon Abyss planet in the upper realm. Cultivators born in the upper realm had a strong cultivation foundation because they absorbed and refined Heaven-Earth Essence Chi. He was already at Mystic Essence Realm level 6 at a young age. However, in terms of combat experience, he was far from comparable to ascenders who had fought their way through the lower realm and experienced countless dangers before finally transcending their tribulations. Among the many ascenders, Su Zimo was the strongest after transcending the 49 heavenly tribulations. Su Zimo did not fight back with his moves at all. When he released his immortal arts, Su Zimo made use of his terrifying physical strength to counterattack instantly. Ding Yu had never witnessed such a terrifying burst of strength. Against Su Zimo, who was inches away, his mind was in a mess and he did not know how to defend. In a hurry, he reached out instinctively, wanting to reach for his storage bag and summon his Dharma treasure to defend. However, at this distance, Ding Yu was already a dead man. Su Zimo had 100 ways to kill him on the spot. Su Zimo reached out and slapped Ding Yu's forehead in a seemingly gentle manner. Ding Yu shuddered and his gaze turned blank instantly. The light in his eyes dimmed rapidly. There was not a single scar on his forehead. But the power of this palm directly shattered his essence divinity into pieces. Thump. Ding Yu's eyes were wide open. His eyes were lifeless as he fell straight down onto the ground. With a casual grab, Su Zimo removed the storage bag from Ding Yu's waist and kept it in his bag. The palace fell into dead silence. All the cultivators were dumbfounded. Their faces were filled with shock and disbelief as they watched this scene unfold. It was as if everyone's throats were being strangled at this moment. How is this possible? The blue-dressed woman from the thunder-shaking hall was stunned. Her eyes were filled with disbelief as she muttered in a daze, "Ding Yu is actually dead?" The young master of the Sky Scorpion stronghold chuckled in schadenfreude. "Serves you right. Who asked him to be so arrogant and fight with me for the Sua Luo leaf?" "Young master, the Sua Luo leaf seems to have fallen into his hands." The guard behind him immediately reminded him in a low voice. The young master of Scorpio Citadel narrowed his eyes. The young masters of the other factions were also shocked, with different expressions on their faces. Seeing this, Commander Lu's expression turned ugly. He clenched his fists tightly. It was obvious that he was furious. He had not expected Ding Yu to be such a disappointment. Not only did he fail to kill Su Zimo within 20 rounds, he was killed in a single palm strike instead. Yan Fei had only just snapped out of his stupor as well. He heaved a long sigh of relief and chuckled. "Brother Lu, I've won." Actually, the reason why he dared to make that bet with Commander Lu was because he had received some news previously and deduced something. Commander Lu's gaze was dark. He did not say anything and merely glared coldly at the green-robed cultivator in the arena. Following Ding Yu's death, the formation barrier around the arena gradually dissipated as well. It was only at this moment that many cultivators snapped back to their senses. Instantly, a deafening commotion broke out within the palace. Ding Yu is dead. Heavens! A Grade 6 Mystic Immortal was killed by a Grade 5 Mystic Immortal despite his cultivation realm. Furthermore, it was an instant kill. Ding Yu was killed in a single palm strike before he could even retaliate. That was too fast. What's the background of that person? Many cultivators speculated that even if they were in Ding Yu's shoes, it would be difficult for them to dodge that sure kill attack if they were caught off guard. However, with Ding Yu's death, that person is in big trouble and won't be able to survive. That's right. There's no way the cultivators of Mystic Een Mountain will let him off. Before their words were finished, many cultivators of Mystic Een Mountain had already lunged forward. "Young master!" Some of the cultivators charged towards Ding Yu. Ding Yu's guard, the Grade 7 Mystic Immortal, had a cold expression and killing intent as he charged towards Su Zimo. "Thief! Pay with your life for our young master. What are you guys doing? Are you trying to bully him with numbers just because you can't beat him?" Yu Hao could not watch this any longer and hollered. He took out his gigantic axe from his storage bag and charged into the arena as well, blocking the Grade 7 Mystic Een Immortal of Mystic Een Mountain. Shen Fei and Gu Wenjun attacked as well. To the three of them, Su Zimo was their savior, and naturally, they would not allow him to be ganged up on like that. Duan Tianliang and Goldie knew that their cultivation realms were not high enough and stood obediently in the crowd. Boom, boom, boom. Dharma treasures collided, divine abilities fought, and immortal arts surged. In the blink of an eye, the entire palace fell into chaos. The surrounding cultivators retreated one after another, afraid that they would be involved and hurt themselves. Oh no. Su Wan seemed to have thought of something as she frowned and exclaimed softly. Duan Tianliang, on the other hand, looked relaxed and waved his hand. The people of Mystic Een Mountain are nothing. Don't worry, exalted immortal. I'm not worried about the people of Mystic Een Mountain. Su Wan shook her head. Ding Yu's death means that Commander Lu just now has lost the bet. Fellow Taoist Su has offended Commander Lu of Dragon Lake City. If he finds an excuse to cause trouble, fellow Taoist Su's life will be in danger. Right then, a figure in armor barged into the palace. Judging by his attire, he was a city guard. Report. The city guard had just barged into the palace when he shouted and ran towards Commander Lu and Yen Fei. What happened? Yen Fei stood up and asked in a deep voice. The guard said hurriedly, "There's an army of cultivators gathered outside the city. I can vaguely hear the howls of wolves. It should be one of the 4 great bandits, the Vicious Wolf Army. There are about thousands of them." What is the Vicious Wolf Army doing? Are they here to court death? Yen Fei's expression turned cold. That bunch of bandits. We didn't eliminate them, and yet they came knocking on our door. Are they declaring war on our Dragon Lake City? I don't think so. The guard shook his head with a hesitant expression. Commander Lu's heart skipped a beat as he suddenly said, "Brother Yen, you don't have to bother about this matter. The Vicious Wolf Army isn't here for us. It's him." Commander Lu pointed to Su Zimo below. When many cultivators heard that, they realized that the Vicious Wolf Army was clearly here for Su Zimo. Duan Tianliang was a little nervous as well, and his palms were sweating. The situation doesn't seem too good. Ding Yu only brought more than 10 guards with him this time round. If it was just these guards, they would not be able to cause much of a stir. However, the thousands of soldiers of the Evil Wolf Army were all extremely ferocious and vicious people. 2K Reading Network. Chapter 1844. Su Wan was still able to maintain her composure as she said in a low voice, "Don't be impatient, this is Dragon Lake City. Not to mention a few thousand troops of the Vicious Wolf Army. Even if the entire army of the Vicious Wolf Army was gathered, they wouldn't dare enter the city. These guards and exalted immortals of Dragon Lake City aren't to be trifled with." Duan Tianliang's expression eased up slightly when he heard Su Wan say this. On the other side, after the messenger guard brought this news, he didn't leave, and he had a hesitant expression as he repeatedly wanted to speak but stopped. What else is there? Speak. Commander Lu had a bellyful of anger from losing the bet, and when he saw the messenger guard hesitating, his expression couldn't help but go cold as he berated the messenger guard. The messenger guard was terrified to the point his entire body trembled, and he hurriedly said, "Commander Lu, I've just received news that originally Ziyang's Chen Xianyang led an army of 5,000 to Dragon Lake City, but an accident occurred on the way. The Sala leaf was something that all the great powers wanted to obtain. But at the auction this time, not a single Ziyangu cultivator was seen, and this was truly slightly strange. When they heard this news, all the cultivators revealed expressions of sudden understanding. But in next to no time, an even greater doubt arose in the hearts of everyone. Ziyangu was one of the 8 great powers, and Chen Xianyang was Ziyangu's young master. What accident could have occurred when he led an army of 5,000? The messenger guard swallowed his saliva and said, "I've received definite news that Ziyangu's army of 5,000 was almost completely annihilated, and only a few hundred people survived. Ziyangu's young master, Chen Xianyang, was heavily injured, and one of his arms was severed." When this news was spoken out, it was like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples, and it caused an uproar in the crowd. Which power had such ability to heavily injure Xiangu's army of 5,000? Which power had such courage to actually attack Xiangu's army? Moreover, they even heavily injured Qin Xianyang. It could be imagined that no matter which power did it, they'd already become enemies with Xiangu and become Xiangu's #1 enemy. Could it be the work of the 4 great bandits? As far as I know, 2 of the 4 great bandits, the Wolf Army and the Goshawk Gang, are very close to Xiangu. It shouldn't be them. However, I haven't heard that the remaining 2 bandits have any grudges with Xiangu. Everyone started discussing, but they still couldn't guess the result. Duan Tianliang had a strange look on his face and did not say a word. When Commander Lu heard this news, his expression was indifferent. Not to mention that only a few thousand people from Xiangu had died. Even if all the people from Xiangu had died, he wouldn't care. Once Xiangu was destroyed, a second new power would be born. The cycle of reincarnation would change again and again. But Dragon Lake City remained unchanged since time immemorial, and it stood towering from beginning to end. Commander Lu's gaze was still fixed on the green figure in the middle of the arena. He casually asked, "Oh, who did it?" According to this subordinate's understanding, the person in the lead is called Su Zimo, and he's precisely the person that the Wolf Army has a bounty on. The guard said in a deep voice. "What?" Commander Lu's heart skipped a beat as he exclaimed. At the side, Yan Fei's expression was normal, as though he wasn't surprised at all. When the crowd below heard that, there was a momentary silence as well. Thereafter, an even louder uproar broke out. To think that it's him! No wonder he dared to accept Ding Yu's challenge and killed him with a single palm strike. That person sure has guts. To think that he would dare to attack Xiangu. That person didn't just offend Xiangu. He offended the Wolf Army and Mystic Een Mountain as well. The woman in blue from Thunderquake Hall was shocked. She could not help but look at the green-robed cultivator in the middle of the arena once more with a hint of shock and curiosity in her eyes. Su Wan's eyes shone brightly as well. She had long noticed that Su Zimo was different from the rest. However, even she hadn't expected that person to have hidden his strength so deeply. The burly man behind Su Wan said in a low voice, "Miss, your eyes are sharp." Su Wan shook her head gently. "Uncle Lu, I've still underestimated him." The burly man addressed as Uncle Lu pondered for a moment before sending a voice transmission with his spirit consciousness. "Miss, I know that you want to befriend him and recruit him. However, from the looks of it, that's too risky." Su Wan was silent. She could understand what Uncle Lu was implying. Indeed, Su Zimo had immense potential. That was the reason why she wanted to befriend Su Zimo, even though she knew that he was being hunted down by the Wolf Army. However, Su Zimo had offended 2 of the 8 major factions, Xiangu and Mystic Een Mountain. At the same time, he was on bad terms with one of the 4 bandits, the Wolf Army. If they befriended or recruited this person, it would definitely bring trouble to Double Dragon Sect and they would be implicated. At that time, Double Dragon Sect would have to face 3 top factions because of a single person. No matter how she looked at it, that wasn't a wise move. Su Wan sighed internally. No matter how willing she was emotionally, she was the daughter of the sect master of Double Dragon Sect after all, and had to consider the many members of Double Dragon Sect. She could only follow her logic and give up on Su Zimo. On the other side, on a seat high up in the palace, Commander Lu's expression was dark as he turned to look at Yan Fei beside him and said slowly, "You knew about this long ago. That's the reason why you dared to make this bet with me." At that moment, Commander Lu gradually realized what was going on. Yan Fei's expression was uneasy as he said, "I did receive news that the Xiangu army was intercepted by a group of people and was completely wiped out. The leader was extremely young and had green robes and black hair. However, I don't know who he is." After pausing for a moment, Yan Fei continued, "However, Su Zimo once took out a storage bag in order to bid for that numinous treasure fragment. I asked and found out that there were 1,000 mystic-grade Dharma treasures in that storage bag." Commander Lu's expression was mocking as he played along with Yan Fei. How could an ordinary cultivator, a rank 5 mystic immortal, possess 1,000 mystic-grade Dharma treasures? Therefore, based on the information you received, you concluded that the green-robed, black-haired cultivator was Su Zimo. Yan Fei shook his head and chuckled. There are many green-robed, black-haired cultivators. How could I conclude based on the information I received? I merely made a bet. If this person is the same person who intercepted Ziyanggu, he must have some tricks up his sleeves and has a chance of withstanding 50 moves from Dingyu. At this point, Yan Fei heaved a long sigh and continued, however, even I did not expect that this person would be able to kill Dingyu with a single palm strike. When he heard that, Commander Lu's heart was filled with rage that he had nowhere to vent. It could not be considered as Yan Fei setting him up. Firstly, he was the one who suggested the bet. Secondly, Yan Fei did not dare to conclude that Su Zimo was the one who intercepted the Ziyanggu army. That was a risk in itself. However, no matter what, he had suffered a huge setback today. The root of everything was the green-robed cultivator below. Commander Lu's gaze landed on Su Zimo once more with a chilling killing intent that sent chills down one's spine. He was prepared to strike. Chapter 1845. In just a short while, the dozen or so guards of the mysterious Yin Mountain were either dead or injured. Even Ding Yu's personal guard, the level 7 Mystic Immortal, was beaten back by Yu Hao's giant axe until he spat out blood. Even if Su Zimo only had Yu Hao, Xin Fei, and Gu Wenjun by his side, they were still able to defeat the dozen or so guards of the mysterious Yin Mountain. In fact, Su Zimo's attacks were rather restrained. From the beginning to the end, he did not use any earth-shattering trump cards or secret techniques, nor did he create such a shocking scene in the 100,000 mountains. Others might not be able to tell, but Duan Tianliang, who knew a little about Su Zimo's background, knew that Su Zimo was obviously holding back. There were two concerns in Su Zimo's heart. First, there were some exalted immortals watching in Dragon Lake City. He did not dare to reveal the bloodline of Qinglian's true body for fear of being recognized. Of course, even if he did not use his bloodline, just the powerful physical body of Qinglian's true body was enough to suppress these guards of the mysterious Yin Mountain. The second concern was that Commander Lu, who was standing high above. Since the beginning of the battle, Commander Lu's gaze had been on him. His spirit perception could clearly sense the killing intent in Commander Lu's heart. This was a level 8 Mystic Immortal, 3 minor realms lower than him. Su Zimo did not dare to be careless. A level 8 Mystic Immortal had already surpassed him in terms of strength. Even if he used all his trump cards, he might not be able to defeat a level 8 Mystic Immortal. Moreover, this Commander Lu was a native immortal of the upper realm. He had cultivated for countless years and definitely knew many powerful immortal techniques. No one knew what trump cards he had. Therefore, although Su Zimo was fighting with the guards of the mysterious Yin Mountain, most of his attention was on Commander Lu. He knew that once Commander Lu attacked, it would definitely be a thunderous blow. When the news of that guard's Ziyanggu army being intercepted and almost completely wiped out spread, Su Zimo could clearly feel that Commander Lu's killing intent suddenly skyrocketed and became extremely intense. This person was going to attack. Su Zimo was shocked. Although his back was facing Commander Lu, at this moment, all the hair on his body stood on end. Hee. At this moment, a chuckle came from the seats. Yan Fei looked at the murderous Commander Lu and asked with a smile, "Brother Lu, why are you so angry? What are you trying to do?" "Murder." Commander Lu's tone was cold. He did not hide his intentions at all. As the Grand Commander of Dragon Lake City, not to mention annihilating a 5th-level mysterious immortal, even if he killed the leaders of the 8 great powers, no one would dare say anything. Yan Fei smiled and said softly, "Brother Lu, there's no need for that. We've been friends for so many years. It's just a small bet. Why do you have to lower yourself to the same level as a servant?" Commander Lu narrowed his eyes and turned to look at Yan Fei. He raised his eyebrows and asked, "Why? Do you want to protect him?" Yan Fei shook his head and laughed. "He's just a servant. Why would I protect him? However, if you kill this person because of the bet between the two of us, it will not be good for Brother Lu's reputation. It will make it seem that Brother Lu is too petty." Commander Lu's expression sank as he grunted coldly. Yan Fei continued. Actually, even if Brother Lu doesn't kill this person, he won't be able to live for long. Don't forget, he's offended Ziyanggu, Dark Moon Mountain, and there's a few thousand troops of the Wolf Army outside the city. All of these three great powers want to kill him. How could a fifth-level mysterious immortal like him possibly survive? Commander Lu's gaze flickered, and then he suddenly said with a low voice, "Man!" Here. 4 guards of Dragon Lake City stood out right away. Commander Lu pointed at Su Zimo and said loudly, "Expel this person from Dragon Lake City." Yan Fei frowned and said, "Brother Lu." Commander Lu directly waved his hand and interrupted Yan Fei, and then he spoke with an expressionless face and an unkind tone. "What? Brother Yan, are you determined to go against me today?" Yan Fei hurriedly said, "Why do you say this, Brother Lu? But isn't expelling this person from the city for no reason or rhyme? How is it for no reason or rhyme?" Commander Lu said loudly, "This is the Eventide Workshop. This person has no respect for the law and fought with others in the arena. Expelling him from the city is already being benevolent to him." Yan Fei went silent. Everyone was clearly aware that there were a few thousand troops of the Wolf Army outside the city, and all of them had red eyes as they waited for Su Zimo to leave the city. If Su Zimo was expelled from the city, he would probably be instantly torn into pieces. Commander Lu didn't intend to let Su Zimo off at all, and his actions were obviously to get someone else to do his dirty work. Su Zimo was only a 5th-level mysterious immortal after all, and he was neither related nor acquainted with Yan Fei. Yan Fei just now spoke out to help and stop Commander Lu only because Su Zimo had helped him win this bet after all. Moreover, he rather admired this person in the depths of his heart. But Commander Lu had already made up his mind, and there was truly no need to become enemies with Commander Lu because of this person. At the thought of this, Yan Fei sighed and stopped speaking. "Commander Yan, thank you for your help just now." Right at this moment, a voice suddenly sounded by Yan Fei's ears. Yan Fei was slightly stunned. That voice was a voice transmission from Su Zimo, thanking him. Just now, the conversation between him and Commander Lu could not be heard clearly in the noisy and chaotic palace. To think that this person's hearing was pretty good and could even split his attention to hear their conversation in the middle of a battle. Yan Fei's expression didn't change as he sent a voice transmission as well. "There's not much I can do. I can only help you up to this point and ensure your safety in the city." "It's enough." Su Zimo sent a voice transmission. He was very clear that if Yan Fei didn't speak out to stop him just now, it would definitely cause a chain reaction once Commander Lu made a move against him. He naturally wouldn't allow himself to be captured without a fight, and the situation would continue to escalate. Furthermore, there were many elite cultivators of Dragon Lake City behind Commander Lu. Once the situation went out of control and the army in the city gathered, even he might not be able to leave Dragon Lake City alive, let alone Yu Hao, Duan Tianliang and the others. Yan Fei thought for a moment before continuing, "The situation you're facing is much more dangerous than you imagine. Cultivators can kill as they wish outside the city. You're not only facing the vicious wolf army. Don't forget that you took Ding Yu's storage bag earlier on and there's a treasure, the Sala leaf, inside. I wonder how many people from the factions in the palace are eyeing the storage bag in your hand." Su Zimo nodded. Yan Fei was not exaggerating. At this moment, Su Zimo could clearly sense that there were many cultivators in the surrounding crowd that revealed intense hostility towards him. However, because this was Dragon Lake City, it was not convenient for many cultivators to attack. Once they were outside the city, everyone would no longer have any reservations. At that time, who knew what kind of people would jump out? Commander Lu recognized this point as well, which was why he stopped and chose to chase Su Zimo out of Dragon Lake City. Yan Fei sighed in his heart and sent a voice transmission. "Once you're outside the city, you can only pray for yourself." He did not say it explicitly. Actually, in his opinion, once Su Zimo left the city, it would be a dead end. End of chapter. Chapter 1846. Get out of Dragon Lake City. The 4 Dragon Lake City guards arrived before Su Zimo with cold expressions and disdainful tones, as if they were chasing away an ant. Yu Hao clenched his fists tightly and was infuriated in his heart. Anyone could discern that Commander Lu's actions were obviously trying to get someone else to do his dirty work. Disregarding the law was just an excuse that Commander Lu casually found. Even if they weren't allowed to casually attack here, it was also Dark Moon Mountain's side that provoked first, and Su Zimo was only forced to counterattack. Su Zimo raised his hand slightly and stopped Yu Hao's argument, then glanced at the 4 Dragon Lake City guards and smiled indifferently. Today, you guys drove me out of Dragon Lake City, but I'll return in the future. Dream on. Death is at hand and you still don't know it. The 4 city guards sneered. All of you stay in the city, there's no need to follow. Su Zimo ignored the 4 city guards and turned around to speak to Yu Hao's group of 3 instead. After that, he turned around and walked out of the palace with firm footsteps and a fearless expression. Big brother, what should we do? Gu Wenjun looked at Su Zimo's back as her eyes revealed deep worry and a struggling expression. She knew clearly as well. Once Su Zimo left this time, he would never return. Even if she followed, it would be of no use and she would be torn into pieces by the countless wolf army. But Su Zimo was her savior after all. Could it be that she had to watch on helplessly as Su Zimo went to meet death alone now? Yu Hao took a deep breath as a wisp of resolution flashed past his eyes, and he said in a low voice, Brother Su, I'll accompany you. After that, Yu Hao turned around and said to Shen Fei and Gu Wenjun, Second brother, little sister, I'll leave annihilating Yang camp to you guys. After he finished speaking, Yu Hao chased after Su Zimo with large strides. Yu Hao knew that once he went, he would die in battle outside the city. But even then, he still wanted to fight side by side with Su Zimo. Su Zimo's footsteps stopped. Then he turned around and shook his head. You don't have to do this. Brother Su. Yu Hao smiled. You gave me this life of mine. If I hadn't met you, I would have died long ago. Today, my brother is in trouble. How can I, Yu Hao, shrink back in fear? Yu Hao's expression, but his tone was filled with lofty sentiments. Even though he knew that there was no chance of survival. Brother Su, wait for us. At this moment, Shen Fei and Yu Hao's, Su Zimo. We are sworn brothers. How can we miss out on such a great battle? Shen Fei's Gu Wenjun also smiled and said, That's right. Since we came together, let's leave together today. Come. Su Zimo smiled as well and patted Yu Hao on the shoulder. You guys are good. Right then, Su Wan sighed gently and cupped her fists towards Su Zimo with an apologetic expression, whispering, Fellow Taoist Su, given the circumstances, no matter how highly Su Wan thought of Su Zimo, she would not dare to go against Commander Lu and the pressure of the 3 factions to help Su Zimo. It's fine, I can understand. Su Zimo smiled gently. After a moment of silence, Su Zimo said, Fellow Taoist Su, can I ask you for a favor? What is it? Su Wan replied hurriedly. Su Zimo pointed to Yu Hao and the other 2 as well as Duan Tianliang, De Huang and Ning Zhao. I'll have to trouble you to take them in for the time being. Bring them along when we leave the city. Brother Su, what are you? Yu Hao frowned and wanted to argue. Su Zimo interrupted him with a voice transmission with his spirit consciousness, saying bluntly, Yu Hao, I'll be distracted if the 3 of you follow me out of the city. Given my capabilities, I have no worries when I'm alone. If I want to leave, I can leave at any time. Even the thousands of soldiers of the ferocious wolf army won't be able to stop me. If anyone else were to say something like that, they would definitely be mocked. However, when it came from Su Zimo, Yu Hao and the other 2 felt that it was only right. They had witnessed Su Zimo's capabilities before and they knew that he was indeed terrifying. The apocalyptic scene in the 100,000 Mountains felt like it was just yesterday. It was still extremely shocking. However, Yu Hao and the other 2 knew that the ferocious wolf army was prepared this time round and would definitely be more terrifying than the Zuyangu army. Furthermore, by then, Su Zimo might not only have to face the ferocious wolf army, but experts of other factions as well. Yu Hao was still hesitant. Su Zimo's voice sounded once more. If you guys want to leave the city, follow Su Wan and leave after ensuring your safety. Duan Tianliang and De Huang know my location. When the time comes, they'll naturally look for me. Duan Tianliang nodded hurriedly. Right from the beginning, he did not stand out to fight alongside Su Zimo. That was because he knew his limits. If he were to leave the city with Su Zimo, he would definitely become a burden to Su Zimo. It's settled then. Su Zimo added with a firm tone that left no room for doubt. Yu Hao and the other two exchanged glances and could only nod. Hurry up, don't dawdle. Right then, a city guard could not help but sneer and berate when he saw Su Zimo standing in the crowd motionlessly. Lad, it's too late to be afraid now. Hurry up and leave. Don't force us to chase you out of the city. The other guard sneered as well. Su Zimo had an indifferent expression as he nodded to Su Wan before turning and leaving. Among the crowd, Zuyang's guardian Shui secretly watched the entire process and nodded secretly. The development of the situation was similar to what he had expected. Even if he did not make a move, this Su Zimo would definitely be torn into pieces by the wolf army. Soon, under the watch of the 4 city guards, Su Zimo walked out of the underground palace and disappeared from everyone's sight. In the sky above the palace, Commander Lu had a complacent expression as he smiled lightly. Suddenly, he raised his voice and said, "Everyone, tonight is destined to be a sleepless night. Why don't we go to the city walls and watch a good show? That's how it should be. Let's go." Many Dragon Lake city guards laughed loudly. The numerous cultivators below and the young masters of the various major factions moved as well. Even if Commander Lu did not say that, they would still watch the battle from the city walls. After all, Su Zimo still had a Suo Luo leaf in his possession. That was a treasure that all the major factions coveted. The indignation in Commander Lu's heart lessened slightly. The reason why he lost the bet today was entirely because of Su Zimo. If he could see the scene of Su Zimo being torn into pieces by the wolf army, his mood would naturally be extremely comfortable. This feeling was even more satisfying than him personally making a move. Commander Lu looked at Yan Fei beside him and said with a smile, "Let's go, Brother Yan. Let's go take a look together. What you said makes sense. Why should I personally make a move against such an ant? Haha. I'm even afraid of dirtying the bottom of my shoes if I trample it to death." End of chapter. Chapter 1847. Dragon Lake City. Even though it was already late at night, the sides of the road were still brightly lit. Numerous cultivators gathered together and discussed, and they seemed to have transformed into a torrent that slowly gushed over from one end of the road. The chaotic sound of footsteps jolted awake many cultivators that were resting in Dragon Lake City. Some cultivators walked out from their houses successively and looked over. Subsequently, everyone saw a strange scene. At the front of this torrent of people was a black-haired young man in green clothes. He had handsome features, deep eyes, and a calm expression as he walked out of the city. The green-clothed young man looked to be slightly weak, and his entire body emitted a scholarly aura as his footsteps were neither fast nor slow. The numerous cultivators behind him followed behind him in a neither fast nor slow manner as well. Strange, why is it so bustling in the middle of the night? It seems to be the group of people from the Eventide workshop. In the past, this group of people would disperse and return home after the auction ended. What are they going to do now? Who's that green-clothed cultivator? He seems to be called Su Zimo, and he's being pursued by the vicious wolf army with a bounty on his head. Fellow Taoist, what's going on? Someone couldn't restrain his curiosity, and when he saw a familiar person in the crowd, he moved forward and asked. In next to no time, this person found out about what had occurred in the Eventide workshop, and his spirits couldn't help but be greatly refreshed as he joined the crowd and intended to watch the battle on the city wall. The crowd grew larger and larger, and the commotion grew larger and larger. It wasn't long before more than half of the cultivators in Dragon Lake City were actually alarmed. A guard of Dragon Lake City looked at Su Zimo's figure and suddenly laughed with ridicule. Look at this person, he's still forcefully pretending to be calm. I reckon he's already terrified to death in his heart. Actually, there's no need to make such a big scene. Another guard puckered his lips slightly and said, he's only a 5th-rank mysterious immortal. I reckon he'll be crushed by the vicious wolf army in the time of a few breaths once he arrives outside the city. I hope he's able to hold on for a while longer under the slaughter of the vicious wolf army, and will be able to watch a little longer. Another person laughed. Who's leading the vicious wolf army this time? I heard it's the 3rd leader and 4th leader. They actually sent 2 leaders to deal with a level 5 mystic immortal. The vicious wolf army wants to kill him to establish their might. These 2 leaders are both ruthless characters. While they were discussing, Su Zimo had already reached the city gate. On the city wall, Commander Lu, Yan Fei, and the other experts with status in Dragon Lake City had already arrived a step ahead of time. Commander Lu stood on top and looked down at Su Zimo. Su Zimo looked up. The 2 men's gazes collided, opposing each other with equal harshness. Su Zimo's gaze didn't evade at all. The corners of Commander Lu's mouth curled up as a cruel look appeared in his eyes. He slowly raised his hand and said in a deep voice, "Open the city gates." Accompanied by an ear-piercing and heavy sound, the city gates slowly opened. The enormous city gate was like the bloody mouth of an ancient ferocious beast, waiting for Su Zimo to step into it. The moment the city gates opened, many cultivators could smell the stench of blood. Outside the city gate, it was pitch black and extremely quiet. The quieter it was, the more unusual it was. Even the many cultivators standing behind Su Zimo felt a sense of oppression, as though black clouds were pressing down on the city and a great army was pressing down on the border. Su Zimo looked at the pitch-black darkness outside the city gates and suddenly smiled before walking towards the city gates. On both sides of the city gates, there were even some guards of Dragon Lake City guarding. These guards were also aware of this matter and crossed their arms as they looked at Su Zimo, who was walking over step by step. Some of them pursed their lips, some shook their heads, and some sneered. Of all the people you could offend, you actually offended Commander Lu. You're really tired of living. Isn't this pretty good? We were just feeling bored keeping watch here and a good show came. We can watch the show too. The guards burst into laughter. Want to watch a show? Amidst the laughter of these guards, Su Zimo passed through the city gates. He passed by these guards and seemed to be muttering to himself as he said indifferently, "All right, I'll let you guys watch a great show today." The moment he said that, Su Zimo had already left Dragon Lake City. Is he talking to us? I'm not sure, he's probably been scared silly. The guards were bewildered and didn't think too much about it. They laughed lightly before slowly pushing the city gates closed completely and locking Su Zimo outside the city. The numerous cultivators that followed from within the city hurriedly ascended the city walls as well. Fortunately, Dragon Lake City was tall and majestic enough. The city walls were like a mountain range that extended out, and even if numerous cultivators stood on the city walls, they didn't feel crowded. Everyone looked down. They saw Su Zimo leave Dragon Lake City and hadn't walked far when he stopped in his tracks. Oh! Suddenly, a miserable howl of wolves sounded out and pierced through the silence of the night. Subsequently, the howls of wolves caused the ground to shake. Even though it was the boundless night, the numerous cultivators that stood on the city walls that were 30 meters tall were still able to see the billowing dust and smoke in the distance when looking down from high above. The expressions of many cultivators went grim as they gasped. Based on this momentum, the vicious wolf army ought to have come with more than a few thousand people. Not long after, in the darkness in front of him, a dense green light appeared. Those were the eyes of the black-scaled demon wolf. Behind these pairs of dark green wolf eyes, numerous enormous black-scaled fiend wolves appeared one after another with surging killing intent, and they formed an enormous semicircle that sealed off all of Su Zimo's paths of retreat. So many people, there's at least over 10,000 vicious wolf army, right? Waves of exclamations sounded out from the city walls. Yu Hao and the others clenched their fists tightly, their palms sweating, and their expressions were nervous. The situation before them was even more dangerous than they'd expected. After all, The combat strength of over 10,000 vicious wolf army wasn't limited to just over 10,000 people. This was because there were over 10,000 ferocious black-scaled demonic wolves beneath the feet of these 10,000 wolf army soldiers. These black-scaled fiend wolves could erupt with extremely terrifying lethality as well. Once the vicious wolf army swarmed over, not to mention a level 5 Mystic Immortal, even a level 6 or 7 Mystic Immortal would probably be trampled into meat paste. Su Wan frowned and said in a low voice, "There's no chance." This time, the vicious wolf army sent 2 leaders, the 3rd and 4th leaders. One of them is a body refiner, and his physical body is tempered. He has immense strength and can fight against ferocious beasts. The other saber technique is strange and feminine, and it's impossible to guard against. As soon as Su Wan finished speaking, the vicious wolf army dispersed, and 2 figures walked out. The person on the left was tall and strong. He wore armor, and his exposed arms were thicker than an ordinary person's thighs. He held 2 huge 4-edged golden hammers in his hands, and his aura was heavy. This person's eyes were wide open, and his face was ferocious. He was the 3rd leader of the vicious wolf army. The person on the right was dressed in black, and a slender long saber hung diagonally from his waist. His expression was cold, and his gaze was as cold as a knife. This person was the 4th leader of the vicious wolf army. Seeing this scene, Commander Lu, who was on the city wall, glanced sideways and said leisurely, "Brother Yen, why don't we make another bet to see how long this person can live?" Ha! Before he could finish speaking, Commander Lu had already laughed loudly. Yen Fei was silent. He only shook his head and sighed softly. He didn't expect that the bet between the 2 of them would cause this person to lose his life. Add more in a few days. End of chapter. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.